hear you.
I was against this, but now I'm for it, so.
Yep.
Okay.
Probably an interesting life at least.
Good morning.
Right.
Good morning, everyone. We're going to call to order this meeting of the PSTA Board of Directors this January 27th. Commissioner Barkley, would you please lead us with the Pledge of Allegiance? Everyone, please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, 2016 is a year of first. We had our first MPO and PSTA workshop meeting, which we're going to talk about later today. And also, we're probably going to have our first experience doing a recension of a vote for our board of directors and a revote. So I'm going to take the chairperson's prerogative to move around our agenda just a bit. And we're going to move ahead the PSTA board officers vote ahead of public comment. We will take public comments specifically regarding this vote, and then after we do that vote, we will move to a general public comment. And now I hand the floor over to Alan Zimmett, our counsel, who is going to explain to us the process and rationale for rescinding the December 9th, 2015 vote.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As the board is aware, there was a lawsuit filed that challenged the board's decision back on December 9th in electing the three board officers, chair, vice chair, and secretary/treasurer. In order to avoid the cost of defending that case, while I believe that any Sunshine Law violation that was alleged has already been cured by the previous nominating committee meeting and the board's full discussion on December 9th, I am recommending that out of abundance of caution that we go ahead and once again cure that violation by holding a full and complete discussion today and holding a vote to elect the chair, vice chair, and secretary treasurer for the 2016 year. The appropriate motion, a way to get that on the floor. Well, I know the staff report indicated a motion for reconsideration, and reviewing the board's rules, the actual appropriate motion would be a motion to rescind the action that was taken on December 9th. That motion can be made by any board member other than the chair can make that motion to rescind the election of the three board officers of December 9th. And to make sure that everyone is clear, the lawsuit is not challenging the election and appointment of committee members, so that it is not my recommendation that you have to revote on the committee appointments that you voted on December 9th. As I indicated, if the board votes to rescind the decision of December 9th on the three board officers, you should have a full and complete discussion and vote again as if the December 9th discussion never occurred. If you do vote to rescind at that point, Mr. Johnson will become, again, chair under your rules as he continues to serve until a new chairperson will be elected. So at that point, Councilmember Johnson would chair the meeting, at least until you appoint or elect a new chair. And then finally, it is my recommendation so that it is make sure that it is clear and in the public that Councilmember Johnson and Councilmember Rice state for the record before you begin your discussion the substance of their discussion that they had that allegedly violated, that is alleged to have violated the Sunshine Law, so that the public is aware of the comments that were made. And so with that, I turn it back over to the chair to maybe start with the Councilmember Rice and Councilmember Johnson providing that information to the board and the public, and then asking for a motion to rescind.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Zimmett. Commissioner Johnson, would you please start by stating your recollection of our conversation?
My recollection of our conversation is that we went to a legislative forum And at that time, I asked Ms. Rice if she were nominated, would she accept a nomination to be board chair? And then one other time, and I don't remember which time, I again asked her the same question, and on both occasions, she answered in the affirmative. Period. That's it.
Okay. That matches with my recollection. It was, the first time was September 22nd. It was at the legislative delegation meeting in Seminole, and I was asked if I was interested in being the chair of PSTA, and I said, yes, I'd be honored to be considered. And there was a second time, Commissioner Johnson asked me briefly if I was still interested, and I said yes. I don't recall the date of that conversation either, but I imagine it would be either November 17th at the planning meeting or November 17th at a legislative committee meeting or November 18th at a planning committee meeting. Wasn't really a conversation, it was just a brief exchange, period. Do we go to public comment, or do we
No,
need
you
to
need to
hear a motion?
Get a motion on the floor first.
Okay.
I move we reconsider, or what is it?
Rescind.
Rescind.
And do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay. Public comment.
Mr. Rask.
And I have, under public comment, I have Mr. Rask, if you would please approach the podium, and then Sully Graham, Rasco,
I
sorry.
think he's given his time to Mr. Rask.
Okay.
Tom Rask, unincorporated Seminole. My attorney filed a lawsuit on my behalf. In the material, it says that the lawsuit alleges a sunshine violation. Ms. Rice, in her email to Mr. Miller after your last meeting, talked about a probable sunshine law violation. So let's be clear, there was a sunshine law violation. It's not really an allegation at this point. This is the second time Ms. Rice plays loose with the sunshine law. It was reported previously that she was in a conference call with Mayor Kreisman and some other city council members, a phone conference that St. Pete City Council members Kennedy and Gertis chose to not participate in because they viewed it as a sunshine law violation. I sent you all an email last night. I was waiting for some additional material that I didn't get, but for the record, I'd like to state that at this nominating committee meeting on the 23rd of December, Ms. Johnson's account of what happened and what she stated now differs from what Ms. Rice said to Mr. Deason of 10 Investigates directly after your December meeting. But the real important question here is, why did these conversations take place at all? Because every elected official I've run this past tells me they should have known better. To characterize it as not a conversation, they were conversations. Somebody said something, somebody responded. Do we citizens really have to go to your meetings, and when you're standing here, for instance, before a meeting, do we have to go up and listen to you? Can't we be assured that the conversations are all in the sunshine? We would not have known about these unlawful conversations had Ms. Johnson not slipped up in the first nominating committee meeting and mentioned it. And at that point, Commissioner Welch was pushing to find out really whether Ms. Rice wanted the nomination. And while I appreciate that, I note that when Ms. Johnson then said, I know because I spoke to Ms. Rice, none of the elected officials in the room said anything. It was a very clear sunshine law violation that was admitted to then, namely that Ms. Johnson had spoken to Ms. Rice, had a conversation about something that was about to come before this agency's board. So the decision you have to face today is, are you going to continue to nominate and elect as chair someone who cares so little about the requirements of the Sunshine Law? And this is the second time this happens. It's better, I think, to let Ms. Rice spend some time gaining the necessary desire for statutory and constitutional compliance, a desire that she so obviously lacks at this time. I don't oppose her nomination as vice chair, but for her to be chair at this point makes a mockery of the whole process. So just to remind you of the basics, if you corrupt the public policy process, then you are yourself corrupt. You swore a pledge of allegiance. You do it several times a month, including today. And you pledge allegiance to a republic. Your oath of office, when those of you who are elected officials, you swore to support, protect, and defend the Constitution of the state of Florida. And our right to government in the sunshine, in case you don't know, or the viewers at home don't know, our right to government in the sunshine is in the Florida Constitution. In fact, in the Florida Sunshine Manual put out by the Florida First Amendment Foundation for several years running, Pam Bondi, in the introduction, talks about that this is not something that is up to the whim of elected officials. It is an enforceable right of the people. And that is why I have standing, anyone has standing, to sue when these things happen. So it is, again, I ask that you ask yourself, are you going to continue to nominate somebody who violates the Sunshine Law? Or should you give this person more time to develop the desire, the hunger to comply with the statutory and constitutional requirements? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Rask. And any other comment or questions from PSTA board members? Oh, we have another card from the public. Thank you. Dan Harvey.
Hey, good morning. Dan Harvey Jr., St. Pete, Florida. I think the most qualified person should take this position as chair of PSTA. There are two qualified people that apparently want this job. And there's some new board members here today to vote for the first time. I don't know all the legalities of this Sunshine Law, but I can tell you, it's nice to know if somebody wants to serve as chairman, if they're going to be able to run, because you don't want to appoint someone who doesn't want the job. So that's a basic question I think that I was in violation of once. You want to be a board member of the Edge District? And I was on the nominating committee, but they asked me if I wanted that. So I don't see why it's that unusual for that to happen. I think that the main thing is that we show unity here and get the right person. But I think this North County versus South County, when it comes to the CSX line, is going to be a big decision. And how this PSTA board comes together with supporting what their alternative analysis was, that light rail versus the CSX line. This CSX line is going to be big for North County, coming right from the airport. It's not so big from South County because we have to go to Clearwater before we get to St. Pete. So how do we come together as a region for transportation? The person that runs this thing ought to look at the regional transportation issues, which Paul Steinman, Secretary of the DOT, said are what we have to get together. And so I'm concerned about South County versus North County. when it comes to supporting the alternative analysis or looking at the CSX line. So I would say, put somebody on board that has the best regional perspective here. And this regional perspective, I think, then will also help us make the decision for where the rays are going to be. Because we need to get this transportation issue solved, whether it's a CSX line, whether it's the Lexus lines. Look at this thing as a region. So you guys take the leadership as here, and I would hope the board member that who becomes chairman can take on that in this little infighting here between who was going to be chair, takes a look at that issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Harvey. Any other comments from the public? Any other comment cards? Seeing none, do we have any comments from our board members? Commissioner Eggers.
If you don't mind, I apologize. I was trying to get down here early in 19. We had an accident, so we were backed up. And if somebody could just recapture where we are, I missed the first part. Just let us know what's going on.
Commissioner Eggers, we're about to vote to rescind the December 9th, 2005 vote. It was, that motion was made by Commissioner Gerard and then seconded by Mayor Beavis. We just took public comment. Now we're taking comment from board members. Presumably, when we vote to rescind, I'll hand the gavel to Chairman Johnson, who will then conduct the discussion about electing our 2016 board officers, not committee chairpersons.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
Yeah, one other comment.
Sure.
Can you hear me?
Sir, we
My
have,
name is Joe Callahan. I received the.
sir, could we ask, is it possible?
Can he come to the podium?
He wants to talk about public.
Oh, your comments need to be specifically about rescinding this vote.
Okay, I'm Joe Callahan.
I urged him on, he's to wait until a little later.
Yes.
My apologies.
We have his card. We'll call his name. We have it, the chair has his card, so we will call his name.
No problem. No problem at all. We'll hear from you soon. We're looking forward to it. Any other comments? All in favor of rescinding the December 9th, 2015 vote for PSTA officers, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That passes unanimously, and I'm going to hand the gavel to our Chairman Johnson.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to recognize the new chairman of the nominating committee, Mr. Diamond. Do you have a nomination for the position of chairman?
Thank you. On December 23rd, the nominating committee met. It was chaired by former PSTA Commissioner Wenge Newton, who I see here in the audience. Welcome, Commissioner. The nominating committee members were all present, as well as Commissioner Johnson, Commissioner Bujalski, and Commissioner Eggers. There was a long discussion led by Commissioner Newton. The nominating committee decided, upon the urging of myself and Commissioner Welch, to take a roll call vote on the nominations for board officers, and the committee nominated Darden Rice to serve as chair by a vote of 4-1, I believe, Julie Bujalski to serve as vice chair, and Janet Long to serve as secretary treasurer.
Thank
Okay. Oh, yeah, and Commissioner Welch participated in the meeting by telephone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll take those one at a time. So we have a nomination of Ms. Rice as chair. Are there other nominations from the board? I see two hands up. Mr. Scott.
I would also like to nominate Mayor Bujalski for chair.
Thank you. Second. Are there other nominations for the position of chair? Is there discussion from members of the board? Commissioner Welch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Wanted to speak to the nominating committee meeting. I was the my view, she would be vice chair this year and chair next year. And the reason I say that is because we've had a practice and a protocol, but not a regulation, that the vice chair succeeds the chair. Jeff Danner followed R.V. Johnson after serving as vice chair. I followed Jeff after serving as vice chair. Bill Johnson followed me after serving as vice chair. And in my view, unless there's some compelling reason to move away from that, and the board can move away from that, that was my concern last year, and that remains my concern. It has, we are in a good place having two very dynamic leaders who can lead this organization. In my view, it's just a matter of timing, who leads this year versus next year. So I just wanted that for the record. Having said that, it concerns me the board is divided. I think it was a 7-6 vote last year. And for whatever reason, and I've asked this in nominating committee, what is the issue with Commissioner Wojcicki moving forward? And although I did not get an answer that really clarified it for me, it is clear to me that we're a divided board. And so I think the best path forward for us to unify, I think, is under Darden. And I did make that vote on the nominating committee, but I'll be supporting the nomination for Darden as we vote today. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Other, Joe?
Mr. Chair, I did not speak at the December meeting on this subject, but I share Commissioner Welch's concern with regard to, for want of a better term, a traditional approach of moving through the chairs in the committee. And the logical person under that format would be Mayor Wojcicki. Darden Rice is absolutely, totally competent and is an excellent commissioner in her home city. Is nothing having to do with her qualifications or any kind of animosity in any way. It is simply a fact that I believe we should follow the traditional approach of working a way through the chairs to obtain the chairmanship position. Thank you, sir.
Commissioner Finger?
Thank you. As one of the newer members to this board, the protocol that others are speaking of, is more of something that you all have adopted along the way? It's not a written follow policy, it's just something. So it's just been a practice. And I can understand that, but also as a newer member, it kind of sounds like that's the way we've always done business. And it may not mean that those individuals that have sat in those positions, and this is not specific to anyone, this is just speaking about that type of implementing that type of practice, can maybe prevent others from having that opportunity to lead because they are having the characteristics that both of you just spoke about. So as myself as a commissioner, I always, and having worked in local government, have sometimes a difficult time accepting that's the way we've always done it. And that's what that's coming across as. So unless it was a written policy that the board had adopted, I would like to come away from that type of policy. So, thanks.
Commissioner Scott?
Thank you, Commissioner, or Chairman. I echo the thoughts and concerns from Commissioner Welch and also Commissioner Barkley. I think the reason the agency has sort of had that practice is because it's one that has worked. And I feel that either Mayor Wojcicki or Commissioner Rice will do an excellent job. I have total and complete confidence in both of them. But also on the subject of the Sunshine Law, alleged Sunshine Law violation, regardless of the severity or lack of severity of that, it still makes the agency look bad in the public's eyes. And we've had, we've had a few black eyes over the last few years, and I think the public deserves better than that for an agency that has roughly a $65 million budget of taxpayer dollars, they deserve transparency. So I think it's important for the public to have that confidence going forward, and that's the reason for my nomination of Mayor Bujalski.
Commissioner Eggers.
Yeah, well, I think that the reason that there is some divisiveness on the commission today and last month was because we are deviating from the norm. It is clear, whether you're on the MPO, PPC, or here, the tradition has always been to come up through the ranks. In fact, last year, when I was relatively new to the board, I was asked by Brad if I'd be interested in serving on the executive committee, and I said it not at that time. I felt like I needed to learn more about what was going on here. I don't know whose place I was going to take, but nonetheless, I certainly, even being on that executive board for a year, don't know that I would be ready to move up the ranks. So I think there's a lot of learning that goes through in this process, and I think serving on the executive board and all of the responsibilities that come with it are important, and then serving as an officer elevates your prominence not only internally but externally to the area, because there are some internal issues we have here to deal with, and at the same time there are some issues that are growing as in the region. So we're going to have some internal stuff going on this year and some external stuff, and I think somebody that's had 9 years of experience on the PSTA certainly is qualified. There is a part of the process, and again, I don't think this is written anywhere, but I know that when we'd sit on the MPO PSTA nominating committee, MPO PPC nominating committee, there were thoughts of, we have 15, in that case we had 12 or 13 members, and there was a thought that, this is made up of large cities and small cities. It's made up of the county members. So there was an opportunity, as we thought through the nominating process, to give opportunities for large cities, for the county and for small cities to have opportunities to be chairman of their organization. I would presume that's, again, I wasn't here on the nominating committee discussions before, but I would assume that some of that goes into the thinking process, as well as who might be the best person to lead the organization this year. We're in that middle seat this year, that we're basically going to accomplish the same thing, because we have a pretty good, strong board with lots of experience. So I think that is a foregone. I don't want to separate the two on that basis, but I think there's the right thing to do, and there's a process that we go through. You can argue either candidate, either person today, either board member for this, and certainly wouldn't be wrong. But I do think, at the end of the day, think about what the right thing to do is. And I really believe when you've had somebody on this board for 9 years, and you've got a small city representative that is about to have their opportunity, it's the right thing to do, and that's why we're divided. I mean, if we did things the normal way, which is not a bad way in this case, I don't want to think that we just throw the normal way out because it's the way we've always done things. There's a reason for that. It's a uniting thing that we go through. It's not a dividing thing that we go through. So I think that's why, you ask why there's a split here, that's why. That's exactly the reason, and I think we owe it to this board, to the employees, to the residents of this county to come together. And again, I'm not going to split the difference on the caliber of the person, because I think there's 15 people up here who could sit in that seat. But I just would ask each of you to think about that a little bit as you make your choice. Thank you.
Other members of the board? I would just like to make a comment. It's my understanding that Mayor Bujalski will be term limited off of the PSTA board at the end of this next year. So if she was vice chair, then we would not be able to elevate her to chair at that time because of I believe it's 9-year term limit on PSTA. I just point that out as a fact. We have without other questions from or comments from the board members, I'd like to recognize Mr. Rask, who's asked to speak on this subject.
Tom Rask, Unincorporated Seminole. Thank you for a comprehensive discussion, or debate, whatever you want to call it. I think it's important that you really probe issues like this. I understand it's a collegial body. One person doesn't get their way, and in no way am I trying to substitute my judgment for that of the board. In fact, if you'll notice, I'm not saying who I think should be chair. I'm saying who I think should not be chair, given the history. You know, I've learned that here in Pinellas County, things operate with both stick and carrot, or pan y palo, as they say in Spanish-speaking countries, bread and stick. And there will be a consequence for those who vote to place Ms. Rice as chair, because it looks really bad, which has kind of been indicated here before. So I just wanted to make that point. It's not a decision without consequences. And I'm really shocked, as they said in the movie Casablanca, to find myself on the same side of this issue as Commissioners Welch and Barkley. But it does matter that it matters how we go about this. The comment that Commissioner Fenger made about that, well, she said that I don't buy the argument this is how things are done around here. Well, I just want to remind you, this is perhaps a bit esoteric, but if it were to be the case on any board that every time someone became vice chair, and that person was, say, a woman or a minority, and every time they failed to become chair because the board then deviated from that custom, then it would be a problem. In fact, I think it would be a problem under federal law, because you cannot deprive people of their civil rights under the color of law, ordinance, custom, usage, whatever. So, when you have someone serve as vice chair and then all of a sudden a long-time member, and then you're going to go in a different direction, it looks bad, especially given the Sunshine Law violation. Also, picking up on what Commissioner Egger said about large city versus small city, North County, generally, the municipalities up there voted to support Greenlight Pinellas. They got on board with something that there was very little in it for them. They were loyal to what this board at that time, the PST board at that time, was trying to do. And what message does it send to these municipalities now if they don't get to serve, if the smaller cities don't get to serve? It sends a message that it's Clearwater and St. Pete, particularly St. Pete, that runs the show around here. So how are you going to get support for future projects, whatever those projects may be? How are the larger municipalities going to get that kind of support? Is it going to be through, what should I call it? Searching for a word here, but inappropriate pressure that we see going on over in Tampa. And I would argue, how's that working out for those people who are doing it? It's not working out so well. Bob Buckhorn's not going to be our next governor, I'm pretty sure of that. So think about what message you're sending to the smaller cities, especially in North County, if you just yank the chairmanship that would have been, presumably would have been going to that person. So, again, I'm not opposed to Ms. Rice serving, say, next year. Not here, not this year. Please vote your conscience.
Thank you, Mr. Rask. The next comment card I have is Mr. Wengay Newton. Welcome. Good to see you back here in these chambers.
Good to be back, and good morning. And thank all you guys for serving. It's a tough job. and you get public scrutiny, but when you offer yourself up for public service, and your life becomes public, so that's what happens. You know, many, many years ago, me being of the African-American persuasion, I couldn't ride in the front of the bus. I had to ride in the back of the bus because that was the way things were. It's the way we always did it. Also, many, many years ago, being of African-American persuasion, it was very difficult for me to have the right to vote. And that's what the way things were, because that's the way we always did it. I submit to you that the use excuse, because that's what we always did it, is not a valid excuse. Also, this is my opinion, and I came back to a second meeting to address this same situation. So we've given it more than, I guess, enough attention as you talk about divided board in December. I don't mind because that's my job. I drove back up from South St. Pete to do just this. And right now it seems like we're going to keep going until you get the vote that you want. To me, it's this way. I served on this board for 3 years. I didn't aspire to be in leadership because I knew I was terming out, and I probably wouldn't make it to that realm because it takes time to get up there. But I also knew this: once you get in the role of leadership on the executive committee, to me, that's a job interview. If you aspire to go higher, you have to do a little bit more than the rest of the people sitting up here. Just my opinion. And Ms. Rice has met that burden. She's been to D.C., she's been to Tallahassee, lobbying to get things that we need to move public transportation forward for this county. She's been to the meeting. She's been doing what she needs to do. Now, just because you on that board and you sitting in that seat, you just gonna give it to them, I think that's a bad way to govern. That's just my opinion. You put somebody in there because they're black, white, Puerto Rican, rich or poor, from North County or South County, and then they automatically get the seat without doing anything? That's a good job. I need one of them, you know? I mean, even now, I'm aspiring to go higher in office. You know, I got to travel 4 counties. I got to work my butt off. I'm not going to sit there and just think it's going to be given to me because I already served 8 years. It don't work that way. It's not, nothing's guaranteed except death and taxes. That's it. And as board members, you have the opportunity to do whatever you need to do to make sure we heal and move forward. In the absence of a policy, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Alan, because I asked this upstairs in our second meeting, was there any policies or procedures that required us to do the hierarchy thing? And I think the answer was no. It was at the discretion of the board. So that's what we did. I chaired that board. I appreciate everybody that came back for that board. I appreciate Ms. Rice for serving, and open yourself for public comment. And I think that you should, I know that you will do well. And that's why I came back this morning to support Ms. Rice. I hope that the board will try to move forward, or you can keep doing things the same old way. I'm glad you didn't, because I'd still be in the back of the bus.
Thank you, Mr. Newton. Is there anybody else from the public that would like to comment? Are there any further comments from members of this board? Seeing none?
I do have a comment.
Commissioner Welch.
Thank you. Just to clarify, and I'm not going to speak to the back of the bus comment because I think that's a reach. The issue here, I think, is performance. And no one said that you automatically move up to the next position if you don't perform. The other thing, Commissioner Finger, I wanted to make sure that you understood is that prior to Jeff Danner, we had chairs who served for years. In fact, I think the reason Commissioner Johnson didn't move up to chair was because Calvin Harris, former commissioner, was chair, I don't know, 9 years or so. So we did change that. And the change to the chair serving for 1 year is also not a regulation. I brought forward that I think it's healthy for an organization to change chair every year. Our commission does it, city council does it. So there are some things that aren't in our regulations that perhaps maybe we need to look at that. But we have made changes along the way. This has certainly not been we've always done it that way organization. We have changed a lot of things over the last 2 or 3 years, and I want to have that on the record. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Eggers.
And all I'm going to say is I absolutely agree with everything Commissioner Welch just said, and I appreciate all of your comments from the beginning of those comments to the end. So thank you.
Other comments? Commissioner Finger.
Yes. Thank you for clarifying some of that. I do agree also with some of the public comment that was just made, because I believe that if that is the direction that, and I wasn't implying that the organization itself has this is the way it's always been procedure overall. I was specifically talking about the titles and of moving people up, which was just brought up as well, from vice chair to chair, and then that's the way that we have done it, and that's the way we're always going to do it, for reasons that were very much just stated. If that is the direction that the organization has continuously followed and wants to follow, then I think that that's allowable if there is a written policy that says this is the way that the board operates. But speaking as Mr. Diamond did, that it doesn't sound like from the nominating committee's perspective that that is the way that this year that the board wants, at least for those that we've put on the nominating committee, that's not the direction that they want to go or are recommending to the rest of us that they want us to go. And so I would recommend that we do have some sort of general guidelines then that do let us know that that is or isn't the policy of the board. I would not be in favor of having that just because you have a title. It means you advance to the next title, because I do agree with what was said out here. It's by desire and from the rest of the board members that are here that can continuously change, as we have a new board member now as well, that might desire a different type of leadership.
Commissioner Eggers again?
I'm just going to make one comment. I'm not going to keep saying the same thing over and over, but if you go back, and I'm saying this blindly because I can't say it definitively, but all of the votes that have taken place at the MPO, PPC, and I'm guessing here, historically, have been pretty close to unanimous, okay? It's not an issue that gets into this kind of discussion. Now, I may be wrong on that as far as PSTA goes. And it's just real simple. Why? Because we've always tried to elevate people each year to a position of leadership. That's all. So it's not an old-fashioned way, the new-fashioned way, or anything else. It simply comes down to that we have elevated Commissioner Bujalski to vice mayor this year, or this past year, for a reason. And there was a person as secretary treasurer for a reason, and that was going to be elevated up for a reason. It's not that, so you ask why we have a 7-6 vote or a 10-5 vote or something. That's the reason. It's not because one person's better than the other. It's just that simple. So I think really what it comes down to is that people, if they're going to vote one way, they're trying to justify their votes for whatever reason. That's fine. And the other side is just basically trying to justify their votes for whatever reason. But it really comes down to, it's just the way we have all decided to do it over the years, period. That's it. Doesn't make it right or wrong. It's just the way we've done it. And that's why you have divisiveness. And that's the message we're going to be sending to our folks out there. And that's a shame.
Thank you. Are there other comments from members of the board? Mayor Beavis.
Briefly, I appreciate everybody's comments, especially Commissioner Welsh, in explaining kind of that it's not the way we've always done things, and that we are open to change if it's for the better of the PSTA or whatever municipality it might be. I find it interesting that we are getting away from a non-written way of doing things, but we find that Mayor Bujalski, and again, as Commissioner Eggers said, I think everybody up here is capable of holding the chairmanship position, and that applies to both Commissioner Rice and Mayor Bujalski. But I find it interesting that we feel that Commissioner Rice could be the chair, and we could then again appoint Mayor Blajowski to the vice chair, because she will never become chair because she'll be term limited. So I don't understand why we feel that she's capable of being the vice chair, which then again would put her in line to be chair next year if she were not term limited. But we don't feel that she could do that same process now this year and move forward as we have done. Not that it's right or wrong or different, but I don't see that there's a reason we shouldn't follow the procedure that we've done recently. And you do, when you step into a vice chairmanship of whatever it is, you do it with the understanding and the attention that you ultimately might become the chair. So I think you pay more attention and try and involve yourself more, because you know that potentially you might be the chair the next time. So I don't see any reason to not follow the procedure that we have done over the years. And I'm glad that it's not written, as Commissioner Wells said, because I don't think it's healthy to continue to have the same chair for whatever you said, 8 or 9 years. I think we all bring fresh ideas. I think we're a very fluid board, and I think we're in a great position to move this PSTA forward, and I don't see any reason why we should not follow the procedures that we've done over years past. If I was the vice chair, or if Wingate Newton was the vice chair, I would expect that that would be the procedure that we would use then as well. Why did we put them in the vice chairmanship role if we didn't expect to move them to the chair? That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Not, am I missing anybody? No. Okay. I'm thinking that we probably should have the clerk call the roll on this. Would you proceed with that?
Can you state the motion?
The motion is, well, we're really voting for one of two people. So it's either Mayor Bujalski or Councilmember Rice.
That wasn't the motion, though.
Yeah, there's two nominations on the floor. It's, again,
Okay.
it's not a motion. These are nominations
Got it.
for chair. So you have two nominations on the floor, so you need to vote for one of the two people that have been nominated.
Rice,
Mayor Bujalski.
Mayor Blajowski?
Mayor Bujalski.
Rice?
Rice.
Bujalski,
Rice? Bujalski?
Rice?
Rice.
Mayor Bujalski.
Commissioner Rice,
Bujalski.
Rice.
I believe the vote is 8-7. I'm sorry, 8-7 for Commissioner Rice. Thank you very much. Would you like me to turn the gavel back over to you for the rest of the?
Okay, so now, first of all, thank you very much. I wanted to acknowledge, this, unfortunate distraction. I haven't been disappointed lately at all. I haven't been worried about things because I was worried about an uncertain outcome. I was just really excited to get started because we have such great work ahead of us to do, and I think to a person, we have a great board of directors, and I'm looking forward to working with each and every single one of you. Very excited about that, so thank you. So let's move on to electing our vice chair. Mr. Diamond, was there a recommendation from the nomination committee?
yes, the vice chair recommendation was Mayor Bujalski, and the secretary treasurer recommendation was Janet Long.
Is that a motion? Can we hear a motion?
I'm sorry, I can state it as a
Do
motion.
we have any
Yes.
other nominations from the floor for either vice chair or the secretary treasurer position? Okay. Going once,
Madam Chair,
going
I'd-
twice?
I'd move the nominations be closed.
Okay, nominations are closed.
We have to
Do
vote.
we take public comment. And do I have any cards for public comment? I don't. Do you have? Okay.
Mr. Rask was the only one that
Okay.
has already spoken.
Okay. Seeing no public comment, do we,
Take a vote, you can take a vote on both nominations.
we'll take a vote on both nominations. And just to keep consistent, we'll do the roll call vote as well.
For vice chair.
For vice chair. I'm sorry. Well, yeah, can we do it for both?
You can do a voice vote. Yeah, just say all in favor of the nominations for.
Okay, I'm sorry. We'll do a voice vote. All in favor of the nominations for Julie Bajowski for vice chair and Janet Long for secretary treasurer, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, seeing none, congratulations to Vice Chair Bajowski and Secretary Treasurer Janet Long. Okay, moving right ahead on our agenda, we're going to move to our next section. We had moved things around a little bit, so we're going to go back to public comment. And this is an opportunity for those of you in the audience to speak on any issue. So, ma'am, you may speak now. Joe Callahan? And could he please come to the podium? Is it possible? Or is there a way to bring the microphone to him? 3 minutes.
My name is Joe Callahan, and I'm here to thank the citizens of PSTA and the United States for giving them care ride transportation to my doctors, to my church, and I appreciate it. The drivers don't need directions. They're courteous, and they're helpful, and my safety is assured. And I wanted to say thank you very much. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Very welcome.
That's very important.
Next speaker, Mr. Newton. You're like a good penny.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah. I just had a question. I was riding in, and I thought about that this morning with and just a question. I don't know if Brad could answer, either Alan, and probably what we currently do, but with the pending open carry, moving through the legislature, open carry policy, how does that affect the bus? Will people be able to open carry on the bus? And currently, with concealed weapons permit, can they bring guns on the bus?
I don't know the answer to that right off the top of my head. We have not had to address an issue of people bringing a weapon on the bus that I'm aware of. But I can certainly look at it if the board wishes me to.
Well, I'm just asking as it pertains to current, I'm a concealed weapons owner, okay? I'm just saying, currently, forget about open carry, with a concealed weapons permit, is that allowed, weapons onto the bus?
I'd have to go back and look at the statute, Mr. Newton.
Okay. I was just curious, and I was riding, I was thinking about that, just something that blew by me, and since I was here, I thought I'd ask, because if people are gonna be doing that, would it, ultimately,
Just to answer the question, our policies on the buses is weapons are not permitted on the bus. Law enforcement coming on in uniform is allowed to carry them, but that's it. Anybody else, if they have a concealed weapon, we don't see it, you don't see it, but nobody else is allowed to carry an open arms, any kind of weapons at all.
and the pending well, it's moving, but I'm wondering how that would affect it, because that's back to the Second Amendment, but I'm just putting that out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Tom Rask.
Tom Rask, unincorporated Pinellas County. I ran into Commissioner Long at O'Keefe's on Fort Harrison 2 days ago. It was just a chance meeting, and she made the comment that it's hard to listen when people come and say the same thing every time. I don't know if she was talking about me or other people, but I thought I'd share some other things today to liven it up a little bit, rather than talking about the things I usually talk about. But before I go on, I want to say that the reason some of us citizen activists talk about the same things again and again is because we want to put it into the public record that you had this information. You had all the information available to you before you took a vote. Because if you look, for instance, at what's happening in St. Pete Beach right now, where they've spent over $3 million defending and losing on sunshine law cases, the previous city council will say we were poorly advised, we didn't have all the information, even though their attorney is the former county attorney, who they're now talking about, the new city council is talking about suing over legal malpractice. And of course, the new city council says this is before our time, let's move on. People notice these things, and especially when it shows up on their property tax bill. $3 million for a town like St. Pete Beach is a lot of money. You may have heard the news yesterday that so the way I'm couching this is in other transportation news. You may have heard yesterday that in Chicago, a very high official, former official, was convicted of taking bribes in a red light camera case. This is the same here in Florida last July. The city of Clearwater has a contract with him, and apparently 13 cities in Florida have contracts. Also, if you look at your agenda packet, page 108 and 109, you will see ads on the Tampa Bay Times website that PSTA runs. I have noted them before. I don't know if I've written to you about them. Ads pushing your legislative agenda. So just so the citizens at home or in the future watching this video knows, the way it works is PSTA spends money with the Tampa Bay Times, and then they go to bat for big government status types, okay? So you spend money here, you scratch my back, I scratch yours. I think it's completely inappropriate for PSTA to be spending any money advocating or trying to build support for their legislative agenda. If Mr. Miller wants to go, or anybody else, PSTA employee who's on salary, wants to go and talk about these things before community associations, neighborhood groups, that's fine. There's no incremental cost to the agency. But to spend money like this amounts to lobbying. It's the same as lobbying for more tax dollars, which brings me to the email I sent you last night, where I talked
Mr.
about...
Rask, you've gone 30 seconds over
No, I have
your limit.
Mr.
You have, oh, I'm sorry.
Yes,
I'm sorry,
thank
I
you.
didn't see that you had.
The email I sent that Hart over in Tampa is looking at whether they can lobby. And their general counsel is writing a memo. It's dragged on a bit. It's taken 2 months. He told me in an email that it was more complicated than he thought. But remember that your general counsel sat here as you voted. This is after I'd alleged what was in fact a sunshine law violation. He sat here in December and let you vote. And I think Mr. Zimmett's an excellent attorney, but I think you should hold people accountable. Accountability is good. It tends to produce good government. And in this case, I've been asking for 3 years now, I've been raising the question, or saying that PSTA cannot spend money on lobbying. You can just read the law that created PSTA, and it lacks the express and specific authorization that Attorney General opinions have talked about. There's a very recent one from 2 years ago. They've been saying, the Attorney General's been saying this for 15 years. And now Hart is looking at it, and Senator Jeff Brandes again is asking, the PTC is asking that we examine whether the Hillsborough PTC can lobby. And in all 3 cases, I would say no, they cannot, not without legislative authorization. So please review this memo when it comes from the Hart General Counsel. Please have Mr. Zimmet offer his written opinion on this matter so that we can move forward. There's been a lot of talk here about various rights. I was surprised to hear Mr. Newton bring up our Second Amendment rights. When you deprive citizens of our Florida constitutional rights, you should think of it as the same as depriving us of our free speech rights or any other rights we have. These things matter. This is how we get good government. Accountability tends to produce good government, as I said before. So again, please look at the issue of lobbying. It's an important issue, because if you don't, then you're acting unlawfully. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rask. Are there any other green comment cards for speaking? Any more comments from the public? Seeing none, we will close the public comment session, and we'll move on to our next item on the agenda. Ms. Mann, if you'll please come up for the Transit Riders Advisory Committee. Morning.
Chairman Rice, Mr. Miller, esteemed board members, the Transit Riders Advisory Committee met on Tuesday, January 12th. The TRAC has a number of new members on our committee, and we look forward to bringing you fresh ideas and input from these recent additions. The meeting carried 2 action items on behalf of the committee. Cindy Raskin-Schmidt, Director of Communications and Marketing, presented the Strategic Communication Plan developed for launch in 2016. As part of the PSTA's Path Forward, this comprehensive plan encompasses marketing, communications, and public relations to demonstrate the PSTA's value to the public. To ensure customer focus, the PSTA will be conducting town hall meetings and performance surveys to determine effective communications, then orienting their service to meet the demands and expectations of the public. The TRAC unanimously endorses this project. The second action item before the TRAC was correction of a Scrivener's error while revising the committee's bylaws in January 2015. The TRAC unanimously endorses reinstating to TRAC bylaw Article 13 regarding membership. Committee members may be removed for misfeasance, malfeasance, nonfeasance, or misconduct by a 2/3 vote of the TRAC members. In addition to the action items, the committee heard presentations from PSTA staff, including Cassandra Borchers, regarding committee conduct during TRAC meetings. Bob Lasher discussed the Williams Park public outreach underway to inform riders of the move to a grid system in downtown St. Pete, beginning on February 14th of this year. And Chris Cochran updated TRAC on the shelter plan, addressing the Phase 2 deployment of the new bus shelters throughout the system and reuse of those that are still in good condition. Phase 2 expands the initial installation that begins in February of this year. The next Transit Riders Advisory Committee will be held on Tuesday, February 26th at 4 p.m. in the PSTA auditorium, and we'd like to encourage all of you to participate. Thank you. Any questions?
Any questions? Great report. Thank you so much, and thank you for all the work you do.
Certainly.
Next on the agenda, Vice Chair Bujalski with a report from the MPO.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. At the last MPO, well, many of us were at the workshop, and some of the things that we discussed, I'm going to kind of repeat here, but as a representative of the PSTA to the MPO, we discussed the regional premium transit study process. FDOT made a presentation. The MPO received an overview of the steps and processes required to meet federal and state eligibility requirements for grants for premium transit projects like bus rapid transit, rail, etc. Ming emphasized the importance of following that process as the MPOs and transit agencies evaluate premium transit options, such as the use of CSX rail line and other alternatives to the region. I will say that, as we discussed at our workshop, there has been some concern expressed. We don't know when these studies are coming from FDOT that can possibly produce things that might change what our overall goals are. And so I think it was kind of agreed that we would try to work together between PSTA, MPO, and FDOT to work together in determining these studies versus hearing them after the fact that the decision has been made, because it does change everybody's priorities when the results are completed. Another thing that was discussed was the complete streets. The MPO received this presentation from Becky Alfonso, the Executive Director of the Florida Bicycle Association, a member of the state's Bicycle Pedestrian Council, and the MPO's Citizen and Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee. The MPO and its advisory committees support efforts to strengthen Florida's law concerning texting while driving as well. The MPO staff provided an overview of the recommendations from the Downtown Clearwater to Clearwater Beach Premium Transit Alternative Study that was conducted in 2010. The study recommended bus rapid transit service as the preferred alternative. As you know, MPO, one of the goals that MPO has set, and we have tried to work into, is connecting, having good connections to the beach and to the region. So this is just part of it. So that study is being re-looked at. And then Whit Blanton, the Executive Director, gave his report. He provided information concerning the 2016 MPOAC Weekend Institutes. He announced that a working group was formed to look at funding options for completion of the Pinellas Trail. The MPO and the county, by the way, were not successful in securing the Tiger Grant funds for the project of completing the trail. Those were the same Tiger funds that PSTA joined heart in applying for our, what's the name of the card, Brad?
Smart card?
Smart card? Yeah. Okay. We also, I think we learned, and I think we're gonna work harder to where our organizations in the region will come together and apply for these kind of grant funds together to make a bigger impact. It was clear that we separated our goals, and hopefully we will not do that in the future. We should all be going for the same goal and the same money and have agreements on those things. He did report that the working group also wishes to pursue a Vision Zero initiative for US 19 and Gulf Boulevard. Vision Zero initiatives focus on the elimination of serious injury and fatal crashes. I can tell you that the biggest crash site safety concern is in North County at Curlew and Tampa Road. Both those intersections at US 19 have the most fatalities as far as US 19 is concerned. And of course, we approved the agenda for our joint workshop, which most of you attended. I'm happy to answer any questions. Okay, thank you.
Any questions? Thank you. Before we move ahead to Commissioner Johnson's report, I just wanted to mention I have been remiss in a very important introduction. Because we got off to an unusual start, but I want to give a wholehearted welcome to our newest board member, PSTA Commissioner Lisa Wheeler-Brown, who is newly elected as a city council member to District 7 in the city of St. Petersburg. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you. Welcome.
We'll try not to throw you into the fire too much. Okay, so Patricia Johnson, Commissioner Johnson, the report please for MPO's local coordinating board.
Okay. The local coordinating board has not met since the last PSTA meeting in December. However, last week, Brad Miller, our CEO, and Ross Silvers, our PSTA mobility manager, and I did have the privilege of representing Pinellas County at the 18th Annual Transportation Disadvantage Day in Tallahassee. We met with nearly every member of the Pinellas County delegation, each of whom expressed their support for providing us additional funding support for our Transportation Disadvantage Program, which is one of the largest in the entire state. Yesterday, Senator Jack Latvala, State Appropriations Subcommittee on Transportation, was planning to address the topic. We're hopeful that these efforts will result in increased TD funds for PSTA in the near future. I need to share with all of you demographic breakdown. We have which Commissioner Mayor Bolczewski just mentioned that we had a meeting and Tri-County Transportation Disadvantaged was there and did give a report. One of the things that I think that people need to understand, as the most densely populated county in the state of Florida, we also have a disproportionate amount, I don't know if that sounded good or not, amount of seniors that need services. And we've always been very careful to try to address those. And let me give you this breakdown. Hillsborough County has 1.3 million people. The population of 65 and over is 12%. Population with disabilities is 22%. Population in poverty is 22%. And the transportation disadvantaged trips provided fiscal year 2014 to 2015 by Hillsborough was 697,392. Most closely attended people, Pinellas County, population 910,651. Population 65 and over is 19%. Population with disabilities, 13%. Population in poverty, 14%. And here's the big one. The TD trips provided fiscal year 2014 to 2015, our county, 2,664,655,000. So we more than tripled the trips provided to the people that we care so much about in this county. And that's something that nobody ever brings up or talks about. But we would like to continue to serve those persons that are in need of transportation in the future, and that's what we talked about on the TD Day in Tallahassee. Upcoming events, tomorrow the Tri-County LCB will meet at FDOT District Office in Tampa. And they're the ones that provided us with those figures. The next LCB meeting will take place February 16th, 9:15, at the MPO's conference room in downtown Clearwater. Certainly love to take any questions. It was cold, it was wet. Our CEO had to stand out in the rain and give a speech. I think it was good, though. We did get to pass those figures along to our legislators, who were shocked that we were doing that much. They didn't have a clue. So, thank you very much, Brad.
Commissioner Johnson.
Madam Chairman, the numbers that Councilmember Rice, Councilmember Johnson read didn't stick very well in my head. I think it might be useful if they could be provided to us along with the allocation of TD dollars to those various counties. And perhaps that could be provided to us as we get into the TD briefing, the legislative briefing sheet. So, so thank you. I think it's a telling story. I like stories.
And there's one figure that I didn't tell you that I left off. The potential TD customers served in Hillsborough County is 6%, in Pasco 3%, and in Pinellas 9%. And that's an annual performance report.
Thank you. That's an excellent suggestion, Commissioner Johnson, because you're absolutely right. The numbers do tell quite a story. It's a little bit easier to see written down. And thank you so much for your work, Commissioner Johnson, for your indefatigable work on this issue and being such a strong voice for the transportation disadvantaged. And thank you, and Brad, for your taking that trip to Tallahassee a couple weeks ago. So moving along, we have, if you'll see on your agenda, we have our consent agenda. Board members may pull items for discussion? If so, you may do that now. If not, I'll entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda. Commissioner Dayton?
Number B, hybrid battery parts and equipment. We approved that in the Finance Committee based on whether we could get some sort of an estimate of how much was actually involved. If you look at the hybrid bus fleet life cycle analysis that's included on this, we've got 10 2009 buses that are coming due. They've got $100,000 is the hybrid component design life, and fleet average amp hours are 99,000. So it looks like this group is about ready to be replaced, which would cost $2,426,000. We didn't know exactly how much was actually going to have to be done. For the supplies part in our fleet monitoring budget, we've got $4,187,000 set up for supplies, but we have just no idea how much is actually going to be spent for this for the 2009 buses, and we asked to get some sort of an explanation on that. Do we have anything on that?
Madam Chair and Mr. Dayton, we're working on that. This action item, which the committee did endorse, is essentially a multi-year contract with the vendor to provide these component parts to the buses, replacing what we were doing before, which was buying them on an as-needed basis, one by one. So we're getting better prices by doing a bulk purchase, by bringing this to you as a multi-year deal. But as it was discussed at the committee, we're working on an estimate, a revised estimate for how many of these components we're going to need in the coming year. I don't have that for you yet, but we will provide that to you. But these come out of our operating budget, and they're replaced as they wear out and malfunction on the buses as part of the ongoing maintenance. But we're trying to put together an estimate or a projection from in this fiscal year how many of these key components of the hybrid buses we're going to have to replace, and then for next year.
So we don't have
Madam Chair.
estimate of this. We've had a week
Right,
or
so the vote on the contract is just on a multi-year contract to be funded out of the operating budget of PSTA. It doesn't have a specific dollar amount.
Okay, so we're not approving a dollar amount. We're just saying we will purchase at this
price,
these limits.
Yes.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Johnson and then Commissioner Barkley.
I just was wondering if a process, if we would want to approve the items that have not been pulled, and then go back to completing the discussion on the hybrid.
We pulled this item, ask if anybody else wants to pull any other item.
Okay, thank you. So the suggestion is to pull the item about the hybrid battery parts and equipment for discussion, and then look for an approval for the rest of the consent agenda.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. I don't need to take public. Okay, all right, so then we'll move back to our discussion on the hybrid battery parts and equipment, and Commissioner Barkley.
Madam Chair, the Finance Committee unanimously approved the contract with Florida Detroit Diesel Allison for the purchase of hybrid battery parts and equipment, and on an as-needed basis within the operated budget. This is a one-year agreement with 2 one-year options. We are not saying that we're buying the aggregate total of buses that Commissioner Dayton alluded to. All we are saying is we have negotiated a fixed price for parts. They will be replaced on an as-needed basis. This is not a huge chunk of the budget that we're talking about here. We're talking about routine maintenance.
Any other?
Well, yeah, the budget we're talking about here is $2,400,000.
our total budget for materials in the year is $4,200,000. So it's a big part of the budget if we spend the whole thing. And if we're saying we're just going to buy that for those amounts, that's fine, but I'm uncomfortable with the idea that there's a certain amount that's not specified. I mean, we got 10 things to buy, and are we gonna buy them, or are we not? That's all.
Madam Chair, just a point of clarification, that $2.4 million estimate is for the 3 years, the
No,
full
that's-
3 years of the contract.
That's just for 1 year. That's for 2009. That's 2000. Yeah, that's if we buy the hybrid energy storage, if we buy the dual power inventory, and we buy the EV4 commission, that's $246,000 per bus. For 10 buses, that's $2,426,000.
Mr. Scott.
Commissioner Scott?
Thank you. I believe, if I may, what Commissioner Dayton's getting at is that according to this spreadsheet here, we have a slew of these 2009 buses that are at the end of their useful life, according to what was presented to the committee. And what he and what I would like to see as well is what do we think we're actually going to have to spend? We'd like to see a projection on that. So.
Right, and we're working on putting that together. I'm sorry, I didn't see what you were exactly looking at, Mr. Dayton, but that's right.
Did I say that?
Yeah. So should we wait until we have this before we pass this, or are we just gonna say?
We can certainly hold off on this. Again, as Mr. Barkley, Chair of the Finance Committee, stated, this is simply to lock in these prices with this vendor. It's your call. I mean, right now, we're buying them basically from the same vendor as they wear down. So in the next month, I can't guarantee the price, but we're glad to bring this back at a future
All right,
meeting. That's no problem.
Let's do that then.
Vice Chair?
Brad, if we're just locking in, are we committed to purchase
No,
by this action?
no.
So this is not an RFP for purchasing anything?
We conducted a invitation for bid to try to get lower prices by doing a contract rather than buying individual parts.
Kind of like the gas futures, you lock in, but you don't commit.
Yes, but there's no obligation for us to buy from this vendor.
So maybe what we could do is at least lock in the price, but then ask that we have a discussion on the projections and take that step at the next meeting. Would
That's
that be
fine with me, too.
Okay with you guys, just so we're locked into that lesser price if we're not obligated to buy? Is that okay?
I'll make that motion.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. We'll move forward then. Thank you.
Chair, one question real quick, I'm sorry. Perhaps I should have pulled an item from the agenda, the consent. I just wanted to ask about our committees that have discussions and have votes on, there was kind of a process that we were talking about using, that the committees by item that we discussed to move forward to the board would vote on whether it would be a consent item or a action item. Is that part of our rules, and are we doing that, or is that just not being done? I just wanted to make sure we had that discussion, because I know staff generally comes up with what they think should be on the consent, and then we can pull it here if we want to, but at the same time, I think each board that discusses these things, like our finance board could have said, we didn't, but could have said, let's move that item to the, otherwise it stays on the consent. So I don't know if we're doing that, or if it's just something that isn't part of the rules, and I just wanted to see if Brad had any input.
Yeah, Madam Chair, we've had some discussions with that, and I've spoken with Mr. Barkley, the chair, and the planning committee chairs about doing that. You and I had a discussion that maybe the way we planned on doing it at the end of the committees, going back through and getting the committee's opinion about what should be on consent and what not, just to verify that maybe isn't working so well just because the timing of our meetings and it gets lost. A chance to talk to the chairs about it, but I plan to, about when the committees take an action or to recommend to the board, right then and there, we ask if there's any feeling of whether this should be a consent item or an action item, and then we'll just take care of it that way.
So it's kind of going through that discussion process at this point.
Yes, at the committee levels.
That's fine.
That's right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, that would be a great process improvement. Okay, so moving ahead to our action items, 6A is our update on the 2016 legislative priorities. Commissioner Ben Diamond, who's the chair of our legislative committee, I can give a report, and then we also have public comment on this item.
Good morning, thank you. The Legislative Committee met on January 6th. I want to thank my colleagues, Commissioners Long, Beavis, Johnson, and as well as Bill Johnson, who attended that meeting. We met for about an hour and a half, and we were joined in that discussion by our full federal public affairs legislative advocacy team, as well as our state public affairs advocacy team. We just make some general comments as a result of that meeting, and then I can talk more specifically for just a minute about the status of the federal and the state legislative agenda, and then I guess I'll defer back to Brad to fill in what I miss. I think the consensus from that meeting was that we have begun to turn a corner in terms of our progress, both on the efforts we're making in Washington to advocate for better transportation policy that will help Pinellas County, as well as our efforts in Tallahassee. Let's start by talking about the federal issues. I think it's fair to say, regardless of your political views, that long-term budgeting and planning has not really been Congress's strong suit in the past few years. And so we were pleased, and our team was pleased, that there was a bipartisan effort at the end of 2015 to pass this 5-year transportation funding bill called the Fixing America's Surface Transportation Act, which is known by its acronym, the FAST Act. And so we got a detailed presentation from our teammates from Washington about that legislation and how it may impact our long-term capital needs going forward in terms of, as we all know, we have long-term capital needs with future bus purchases on the horizon. As a result of the passage of that act, we've sort of reworked the federal legislative agenda, which is on page 42 and 43 in your materials. We also have in the materials the timeline of sort of proposed actions by our federal affairs team for the coming months. The first item is to continue to support funding for the Small Start projects under the FTA's Capital Investment Grant Program. The idea being that if the projects that are currently in the pipeline come to fruition, our project, like the Central Avenue BRT project, will then be considered. I understand that it might be eligible in 2018. We're also looking to continue to support funding for the Federal Tiger Grant Program. We've had some discussion about that already this morning. Unfortunately, as I understand it, none of the Florida applications have been approved last year, but we're hoping that through increased efforts and advocacy, we'll get some of that money directed to the Sunshine State. So that's just a very brief update as to some of that discussion. In the materials, as well as this presentation that we heard about the FAST Act. On the state legislative issues, as everyone is aware, the state legislature is currently in session and is in session early this year. I think we heard from our team that we've done a good job of trying to move past the polarizing time for this agency when we were in the midst of the green light debate, and find issues and find ways to talk about issues that will get broad support in Tallahassee. And the best example of that was the efforts to get the State Department of Transportation to approve the grant for the Central Avenue BRT project, which was announced, I guess, in December. That had been at the top of our list of things we were advocating for. So we're pleased with that, obviously, and we still have work in Tallahassee and things that we'd like to accomplish, and that includes the items that you see beginning on page 49 in your packet. Specifically, we're very interested in continuing to advocate for this express route service from the airport to Clearwater Beach. And we all had a lot of discussion in our meeting about the frustrations that many of us have experienced in trying to get out to the beach, and the importance of that from an economic development perspective and a tourism perspective. Also on the list is the continued support for the transportation disadvantage programs, and then our regional efforts on the Tampa Bay Regional Transit Fare Collection project. Several of us are planning to go to Tallahassee the second week of February, along with the Pinellas County, the various Pinellas County Chambers of Commerce. I think Commissioner Johnson is going, Mayor Beavis is going, I'm planning to go. So I just want to, on behalf of the committee, thank everybody for their efforts to advocate for these issues for our county. It's definitely not just a PSTA-related effort, it's a countywide effort. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Brad, I guess, to fill in anything else that I may have missed.
That was excellent, our new legislative chair. Thank you. And look forward to seeing you with me maybe on the bus to Tallahassee in 2 weeks. So the action item before you today is really merely an update. The PSTA board adopted these federal and state priorities back in August of 2015. And essentially all we've done, all the committee is recommending, is taking off the list of the actually several things that we've accomplished, both from the federal perspective and the state perspective. So we're updating the legislative priorities to reflect the remaining priorities in there, and that's what Mr. Diamond just described in your packet.
Comments, questions? Yes, Vice Chair.
Thanks for all the hard work, guys. I know you're traveling on behalf of PSTA, and we certainly appreciate the time and effort all of you put out to do that. I wanted to bring forward what was mentioned earlier by Mr. Newton. I thought it might be a good conversation for our legislative committee to talk about the gun carry issue, not making an opinion on gun carrying, but how does it affect public transit? There was a recent article out about Uber, a guy getting shot in an Uber, and so I think having that dialogue of how these things might affect public transit, having a gun on a bus, and again, not making a political statement on gun carrying in itself. That's each their own, but so I'd just like to see the legislative committee have a dialogue on how that may or may not affect us for public transit in general. I think it's a good conversation to have.
Commissioner Dighton and then Commissioner Welsh.
Yeah, on page 49, talking about the PSTA priority, it says on the third bullet down, proposed to be contracted to a private operator. What's that all about?
On the Clearwater Beach to Tampa International Airport Express, we are proposing to do an RFP and contract that service out. So that's why the ask in Tallahassee is somewhat complex. It's an operating expense. PSTA would save funds because the contractor would provide the vehicles. Of course, would be branded specifically, maybe in partnership with the Visit St. Pete Clearwater tourist folks, to really emphasize their tourist-oriented nature, but it would actually save us money to contract that out.
So we wouldn't have, it wouldn't be under our control, it's just something that would be going back and forth?
It would be completely under our control as far as planning the route and designing when and where it went, and the fare. We would have a discussion and a decision on the fare. All those decisions would be ours. Just the operations, the buses and the drivers would be contracted to a third party, and we would pay typically a cost per hour.
Do we have anybody lined up to do this for us?
We don't have the $2.1 million yet, but the moment we get the green light on that, then we will do a procurement and get this going.
Thank you.
Madam Chair? I'm sorry, Commissioner Welch and then Commissioner Long.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think Vice Chair Bajowski made a great point. I'd like to ask Alan to take a look and see if public transit is exempted at all. I know certain facilities, even under open carry, you can't carry a gun into. I'd like to know if public transit has an exemption.
I don't believe they have an exception for, for the facilities, but I'm not sure about the equipment. That's what I would need to look at.
What do you mean equipment?
I mean the buses.
Okay.
As opposed to buildings. I mean, our buildings are
Facility
considered,
exempt?
I don't believe it is,
Okay, could we get
but I'll put that on writing.
clarity on both the vehicles and this building?
Absolutely.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Wells, we have a legislative committee meeting, I believe, scheduled for next week that will certainly bring this up. And as chair of the statewide Florida Public Transit Association, I'll make sure that we look at this on the statewide legislative agenda as well for all transit.
Commissioner Long?
Yes, I don't know if it's in the planning committee or the legislative committee or wherever it is, but I would like to suggest that there might be an opportunity to, besides putting this out for an RFP, that we could partner not only with the TDC folks or the Visit St. Pete Clearwater, but also some of the major resort hotels on the beach, as well as Tampa International, because it's in all of their wheelhouse in terms of providing better and easier and more efficient access from Tampa International out to the beach. And I found it extraordinarily interesting last week to take a tour behind the scenes of Tampa International to see exactly what they are doing with the enormous expansion project. And this express bus route is poised to go right up the ramp into the terminal to let passengers off. And when they come from the gate side to the main terminal, they'll be able to get on a bus right there and go right out to the beach. So it's pretty exciting. And that terminal is 85 feet up in the air. So, time to get an update from Mr. Lopano.
Absolutely, absolutely. Any other comments? Commissioner Scott?
Thank you, Chairwoman Rice. Two questions and then just a general comment. On page 41, when it's sort of recapping the VSA's work throughout 2015, one of the last bullets there, the last, second to the last, says provide support to PSA staff with efforts to release surplus funds from a completed federal highway project along US 19 Enterprise Road. Maybe we've talked about that in the past and I just don't remember it, and if so, I apologize, but I don't know what that is, and I'd like to get a little understanding of were we successful on that, how much money was it, what the status is of that. And then on page 51, for the very bottom where 2016 legislative request, there's the 2.1 annual operating requirement, which is for the Clearwater Beach to Tampa International Express service. Then the $3 million capital for needed buses. Is that for what buses? Replacement transit buses? It doesn't really say.
I'm sorry, what page are you on?
Page 51. It says there's under the 2016 session legislative request, the 2.1 million for operating and the 3 million capital for needed buses.
Thank you. So the answer to your second question, behind page 49, which is the summary of all of the legislative requests that we have before the state legislature, then there's where there's sheets for each of the items in more detail. So you're reading from page 51, and the 3 million was the estimate for the capital component of the buses. Again, it's our intent to contract that out, and the legislators know that. But there was some discussion, a question about how much, if they didn't have operating funds, but they wanted a capital piece, and they could buy the buses for us, what would be the number? So we put that back on this backup sheet. Again, right now, the ask up in Tallahassee, supported by Senator Latvala, and then in the House by his son, Representative Chris Latvala, is for the $2.1 million operating.
Okay.
And then on the Enterprise Road issue, this was an issue that came up maybe more than a year ago, where FDOT had some excess funds on the Enterprise Road interchange construction project along US 19. And as Commissioner Johnson certainly knows, at the time, there was a lot of issues that Clearwater was looking at, and that area was looking about pedestrian safety and crossing US 19. FDOT approached PSTA and said perhaps PSTA could use this for some sort of transit-related safety initiative, but they did not provide much clarity whatsoever to that. And we've been working with the department to try to get some clarity how we could use those funds. Meanwhile, without any kind of communication, we got notified by the federal government that FDOT had gone ahead and flexed the money over to the PSTA account. And so, just given our sensitivity, I've insisted that we get in writing from the feds and from the Florida DOT on how we are to appropriately spend these funds before moving forward. And VSA contacted, I think it was our trip to Washington, D.C. with Commissioner Long and Rice back in the fall. Representative Gus Bilirakis seemed to take an interest in this and want to see if he could help us get some clarity from the federal government. So as far as I know, we're still waiting on getting some clarity on how to spend those funds.
How much are we talking?
$500,000,
$500,000.
I think.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And then the last comment I had is kind of a general, probably open-ended question, but I want to thank Commissioner Diamond and the Legislative Committee for all the hard work that they did on this. I think this is great stuff. When I read the legislative agenda, what kind of jumps out at me is it seems like it's more industry advocacy and really less specific deliverables for PSTA. And I kind of question if that's really our job. Are we getting good value for that? I mean, the deliverable that I see in here is they're gonna help us with the Central Avenue BRT grant, and that's great. I mean, that's a hugely important project for us. But when I read through the rest of it, it seems like it's more industry advocacy that APTA might be better to do. So I just kind of question if that's really our role on some of this. And that's just kind of an open-ended comment. So, thank you.
Commissioner Long, would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, I would like to respond to that just a bit, because I think you know, probably we all on this board are aware, that in the very near future, Commissioner Johnson for sure knows it, there are 4 brand-new resorts that are going to open on Clearwater Beach. And that number 1 priority that we have this year to establish an express route from downtown, from the beach to through downtown Clearwater into Tampa International is absolutely critical to relieve the quagmire and the bumper-to-bumper traffic going out to the beach.
Clearwater's a mess.
It is a mess, and it's gonna get worse. And so that's the advocacy that we're focused on in this legislative year. And more than, I know there's some resistance to why we have an advocacy group in the legislature and at the federal level, but it's more about the internal process within the legislature and within the federal bureaucracy that we need help with, because here we are, we sit in Pinellas County. We don't have the ability to track each movement of every bill every day through committee and know where it is and stay on top of that. And things move at such a fast pace that without these advocates for us, we'd be very hard pressed to leave here and get up there and begin to advocate on our own. So it has been very helpful. It absolutely is the reason that we were able to receive those funds from the Department of Transportation, which are going to be critical for downtown St. Pete out to the beach. And now we're hopeful we can accomplish the same thing for that Clearwater Beach to the airport component. Economically, for our county, it's essential because if you're a tourist and you're coming here from some other part of the world and you end up spending half of your time here in gridlock traffic, that's not going to be an enjoyable experience. So I don't know how that's industry related as much as it is just economics and trying to relieve congestion, which I think anybody can agree we've got to find a solution for. So we have to start somewhere.
Right. Yeah,
Commissioner Diamond? I'm sorry, Commissioner Diamond and then Commissioner Scott.
Well, no, I appreciate the question by Commissioner Scott. I think it's a good question, and I just two brief comments in response. I mean, the first is, one of the things that I'm hearing from the participating in the legislative committee meetings is that with regard to the federal dollars, we're engaged a little bit in a region by region around the country type of competition. And one of the things that I think I've learned from our team and that they have been, in my opinion, effective at doing is putting together regional bipartisan support and letters to the key members of Congress that are making the decisions to advocate for our region. There was a letter that went to Chairman Schuster on the Transportation Committee that was signed by our entire, basically, delegation from Tampa Bay, and I understand that was impactful. I think it will also be helpful, that type of advocacy in terms of our grant applications, like the grant we submitted for the low-no electric bus application. But I think it's a very fair question, and one of the things we talked about in our committee meeting was finding a time to bring those advocates to the full board and have them give a talk and let the other board members who haven't had the chance to come to those committee meetings have an opportunity to have those questions answered.
And I'm hopeful that they might be able to do that next month, in
Okay,
February.
good.
Yeah.
Commissioner Scott?
Thank you. I was just not questioning the projects, and I appreciate the discussion. That's really been very helpful. My comment was really more directed on the federal side. I just want to make sure that we know where we're going, it sounds like we do, and that we're getting value from the folks that we're hiring to advocate on our behalf. So, thank you.
Great.
Good question.
Commissioner Eggers?
Yeah, just, and when you say advocacy, are you talking about our lobbyists?
Yes.
that we hire up there? Okay.
The
So-
Van Scoyoc.
Right,
Right.
okay, I just want to make sure I was clear on that. I've assumed all along, again, in my whole tenure of 1 year, which is not very long, and I appreciate some of your comments, Commissioner Long, that our council has said that lobbying is something that we're allowed to do. So, I mean, to some of the comments here, I'm assuming that he has made that, I'm not sure what the words that Mr. Rask was talking about, but how, Hillsborough County is going through and having an opinion from their council. I've always assumed that we've done that already. And so I just want to make sure that's the case so that we can put that kind of to bed. I mean, just, if someone could just comment on that.
What I have done is I provided the board a copy of a memorandum that we filed in response to the lawsuit that Mr. Rask filed, contending that the lobbying expenditures were improper under PSTA's special act and the Attorney General opinions that he has cited. That's what I provided the board. That's what the board will remember.
So it was,
I provided a copy of the memorandum.
your opinion was stated that it is fine for lobbying to occur for us to hire lobbyists for this board. That's what you said? Want to make sure I'm clear on this.
I didn't provide again, I provided a memorandum that made with the argument. I have not, actually, I haven't written the opinion that, like,
Okay.
what he's referring to, that Mr. Smith is apparently writing for Hart under their statute, which they're created under a totally different statute than created PSTA. So I haven't issued an opinion. I made an argument, which I believed in and I believe is correct, but I haven't sat down and written like the opinion memo, kind of like what I've done in other situations.
Does your argument process change or elevate by issuing an opinion, or, I mean, I know it's apparently you've done that here publicly, and you've said.
It's probably not gonna change, but it depends on how you ask me the opinion. You ask me what the Attorney General's gonna do, if you ask me what a court's gonna do, or you ask me for my personal opinion. That might be
It's
three
always
different
asking the right
things.
question. I'm learning
That's
that
right.
sometimes you ask the wrong question.
That's a lawyer for you.
So, well, I just want to make sure that our board is perfectly clear. I think on conceptual level, it might make sense. I just want to make sure that we're clear on that front, that's all. So, for further discussion, I want to bring that up at the end.
Okay, any other comments? I just wanted to add that the backup materials look great, so thank you to the Legislative Committee. They're much more thorough. It's great to see this timeline. The one-pager that now features the Clearwater to Tampa National Express route shows that we're continuing to focus on what's really important. And thank you for all that. I think Commissioner Long, in particular, was a voice for wanting to see stronger reporting from our government affairs people, and I think we're really starting to see evidence of that, and that's a really positive thing. So before, I'm sorry, is there a motion to approve the update?
So moved.
Second.
A second, and then before we vote, we'll take public comment. Mr. Rask?
Tom Rask, unincorporated Pinellas County. First, point of order. I asked to speak on item 5A, and I was told because it was on the consent agenda, I can't speak. I asked to speak once it was moved from the consent agenda, and your own rules and regulations say that prior to approval of the consent agenda, any item thereon may be moved to the regular agenda for discussion and disposition. Moved to the regular agenda. So it is no longer on the consent agenda. So I would look for clarification on that, because once it's moved out of the consent agenda, it is not part of the consent agenda according to your own board rules and regulations. As far as Commissioner Egger's question, I appreciate his question about the lawsuit 3 years ago. I remember the argument. The main argument was that I lacked standing to sue. And then the general counsel offered some additional opinions, but significantly, they were never argued in court. Never got to argue them because it was thrown out on standing. So maybe what you should do is get your general counsel to offer an opinion and/or ask the Attorney General for an opinion. There is no cost for that, to have the Attorney General issue an opinion. In fact, the Miami River Commission, who in, I believe, 2000 asked for an opinion on lobbying, was told, no, you can't do it, went back again in 2014. They are the ones whose opinion I'm referring to from 2 years ago. They went back to the well again, asked the question differently, or maybe made some changes. They were still told no. Okay. The reason, the legislative priorities, which I alluded to before, I have not heard anything mentioned about PSTA ridership being down. It's in your agenda packet. It's down a lot. When you drill into the numbers, you find that bus revenue passenger trips dropped 2.6% in November, 6.1% in December. That would presumably matter for what you're discussing. And there was news this morning that, according to the IEA, there's a further inventory build in crude oil. Doesn't look like this glut's going away anytime soon. Also, I'm talking quickly because I only have 3 minutes unless the chair grants more time.
I'm not going to, and
No, I
please stick
understand.
to the issue of the
It
legislative.
is relevant.
Okay,
It is
thank you.
relevant, and I appreciate that I get some additional time here because you spoke. Ms. Long spoke and said that it is critical that this bus from the airport be done to relieve congestion. That is not what the Mayor Kretikos of Clearwater says. He said mostly the problem is day trippers. And I see this myself because I bike there. The congestion is caused by day trippers. People coming in from the airport on the bus is not the problem. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Rask. And just to acknowledge, it was my interpretation that, that you had 6 minutes to speak in public comment, and that would have been an opportunity to address issues on the consent agenda. And we just adopted as part of our new rules and regulations, it's specified that the chair does not have the discretion to grant extra time because that could put other people who didn't get extra time to speak at an unfair advantage. So for those of you not familiar with that, just be sure and review what we just passed. So without further ado, let's, all in favor of approving the update to the 2016 legislative priorities, which incidentally is supported officially from our legislative committee? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. Moving right along to our revised CEO performance evaluation form, Commissioner Johnson.
And before Mr. Johnson speaks, if I could just introduce the topic. This is an action item for you to approve the form by which you will conduct a 6-month performance evaluation on me. Mr. Johnson was the chair of the Personnel Committee that reviewed this back last year, and I also have Trish Collins, I don't want to miss the title, from our HR department, who is our staffing and development manager, and she'll make a few comments about how this new format is improved because it ties right to our overall PSTA performance management system. Mr. Johnson.
Well, let's hear from
Okay, good.
our staff.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair and board members. Over the past few years, you know that PSTA has become a more data-driven and goal-oriented organization, and this focus is really reflected in the performance evaluations that we use for all of our staff here. Last fall, at the board's request, we developed a new performance evaluation for the CEO. This new evaluation form is tied to our strategic path forward goals. It's easier and more straightforward to complete. It's streamlined with a 1 to 3 rating scale and 10 questions. It contains optional narrative elements for your additional comments, and it also includes our mission statement. This new evaluation form is based on the performance. SHRM, which is the leading organization for advancing the professional practice of human resources, SHRM recommends this model for employees like the CEO and executives who have a high degree of influence and control over an organization's strategic goals. So by using this form to evaluate our CEO based on PSTA's path forward goals, you as the board will be able to objectively and effectively rate his performance in leading the organization. So we are requesting your approval of this form today, which will allow us to move forward and implement it, to distribute this form to you at the end of February for board action in March.
Thank you. It sounded like you were sitting in some of our meetings, but I don't think you were there. Just as a bit of background, when we went through this the last time, we identified some areas for improvement in the form. To rather than 1 to 5, we now have some words that go along with those different ratings, and that was part of the process to include here. As you also said, it is now tied to specific objectives and to the path forward. So those were part of the objectives of the Personnel Committee when we considered this. And it was considered by the Personnel Committee back in November. It seems like a long time ago now. There was some discussion about some tweaks in it, but we really didn't, we decided that we couldn't agree on that to move forward. What we did decide was that we would present it at the December board meeting so that you would have time to look at it, and then the formal action would be taken in January to set up the review process, which is in the handout that is presented to you. As far as I know, we have not received any formal suggestions for changes, but that is open to the board at this time. Could I ask if there's any suggested changes to the form at this time? Mr. Diamond.
Just had a question. One of the things that I like about our board packet is the operating statistics, and I was just wondering if you could comment for me. I mean, it seems to me in evaluating the CEO, we want the CEO to understand as a board how important it is that he's holding the agency accountable on our agency's performance in terms of, the number of complaints, the on-time performance, all of these operating issues. And so how is that addressed, or can we just address that ourselves as we fill out this form?
Mr. Chair. That's a great question, and that discussion did come up at the Personnel Committee about this form. And I would summarize the conclusion of that discussion by a number of members feeling, while obviously it's very, very important for me to hold the organization accountable for strong customer service and running the buses as on time as we possibly can, et cetera, you as policymakers on the board don't necessarily and not appropriately necessarily know all of the ins and outs of what goes on each and every day here. What you have done appropriately is adopt a strategic plan called our Path Forward Strategic Plan, which has as its #1 goal to provide customer-oriented public transit service. In the performance evaluation, there are, if you look at the subtext, there are a number of areas which you can evaluate and should evaluate me on that are related to providing premium customer service for our customers. So if you do want to tell me the buses aren't clean or whatever you want to say, there's a space to do that. But I think the committee felt comfortable that it was included in the form.
Well, let me just respond. As I mentioned, that we had a discussion in November. At that committee meeting, there were 4 members there. 2 members leaned toward including some of the basic performance metrics. 2 thought that they did not need to be included. So we were not able to make a recommendation one way or the other on that. And I saw Vice Chairman Bujalski. Did you want to make a comment?
You just said what I was going to say.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Do you want to call on people?
Bill's running, well, you took over there, but,
If you want me to.
You run this section, please.
Okay, Commissioner Barclay?
With regard to the form probably covers all the major issues that we have. My question is, my understanding was we were going to develop a form that's very close to similar positions throughout the county in terms of the kinds of issues that are being addressed. In other words, that we use a format similar to other key CEOs throughout the county, as opposed to inventing our own form. And so my question really is, how does this form match up with those that are in similar key positions throughout the county?
I believe that this form is based on a similar form that is used for the county administrator.
Okay.
So there's
Fine.
a great deal of parallel.
Okay, that's my point, is that we're not reinventing the wheel on this particular item. That's probably a bad thing to say when we're talking about buses, but I just want to make sure that we've got a form that's something that can be comparable to what other CEOs around the county are using. So that's fine. Thank you.
Commissioner Welch?
Thank you. I like the form. The only comment I had, we're a bunch of type A overachievers on this board, and none of us thought a C was acceptable in school. But this ratio is so tight that, 2 is meet so I just, when we get there next year, you know, just wanna, and I can see myself doing a lot of 2.5s or, you got a real tight ratio on that. That's the observation I have, but I think overall it's a good form.
Commissioner Gerard?
I just had a question about when we get this form to complete, is it going to have these, obviously, comments from Brad about how well you accomplished every one of these things, or are we going to have a clean, I think that, I mean, it's appropriate for you to comment on whether you met these goals or not, but I don't think it's appropriate for it to be on the form. I don't know why, but
We could certainly provide 2 copies, one blank and one
I think that would be great.
narrated. No problem.
And Commissioner, that is what happened last year.
Right, I just,
We had
we
a
didn't get this before.
a
when we were
two-page
approving the
narrative
form.
as kind of what Mr. Miller report on where he was to the objectives that were identified the previous year. Commissioner Dighton?
Yeah, this is kind of follows up on what Commissioner Welch was just saying, and I'm sure you guys talked about this, but you have you have 3 measures here, and in some cases you're going to say, wait a minute, this is not average, this is better. I mean, what you got here is that the person is either terrible, average, or fantastic. And I just wonder if there isn't somewhere in between on that. You know, is it more appropriate maybe to have 5 measures instead of 3? And I'm sure that this is something that you guys talked over, but I just wonder what your thought of it is.
Commissioner Long?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, Madam Chair. I'd just like to speak to the comment that Commissioner Welch made a few minutes ago, because part of what I see this form trying to get away from is the individual subjectivity, because if you take into consideration the backgrounds and experiences of this board, we're very diverse and we come from a lot of different backgrounds professionally. And I think when you start going 2.2, 2.3, 2.5, I mean, I'm not quite sure how you get to those kind of numbers. And so, frankly, meeting the expectation, a CEO who is meeting the expectations is really working hard and doing a good job. So I think the 3 category is just extraordinarily exceptional, way beyond the pale in terms of meeting objectives and the criteria that have been outlined, and that there's no shame or negative in meeting the expectations. That's what you want the CEO to be doing. So I'm struggling here to understand what the 2.5 is. Not that I haven't done that myself, but I was counseled at one point in time when I was totally responsible for a lot of evaluations. Like, what does that mean to the person that's receiving it? I don't know, just wanted to put that out there because it's subjective, for sure. I mean, I don't know how you get from a 2 to a 2.5 and then you're a 3. So if you have a response, I'd be interested, but
Well,
otherwise.
My personal thought, and I think I made this in one of the initial discussions on the committee, but didn't push it further, was to have, I personally believe in a 1 to 5 scale, with a 1 being unacceptable in this particular category, and a 5 being outstanding in this particular category. So you would have unacceptable, needs improvement, meets expectations, exceeds expectations, and outstanding. But that's, that would be an option.
Since I think I've made the statement. Real similar to what you said, but in a different way. Where, if you had a B grade in school, where's the B on this chart? You know, I see F, C, A. And so So that's where I got to a 2.5.
But is a B, I mean, don't,
Yeah, you're doing
we're
better
talking
than-
about a CEO.
Yeah, but I still think
A
that,
B is okay.
well, a B to me is better than meets expectations, but it's not exceeding, it's above average. You know, I'm just going back to that, and 2.5 will work. You know, we
Whatever.
did it with the county administrator. I mean, it works in the spreadsheet, but this is too tight for me just to be 1, 2.
Mayor Beavis?
And I would kind of agree with the commissioner. I, myself, in the last review, threw in a couple 2.5s. And I guess my question is, and all reviews are done differently. We do ours a particular way at our city level. And what does it mean if 14 of us give him a 2? Does that mean he's more than half of the people have given him a 2? Because if 14 of us give him a 2 and one of us gives him a 1, and you average those out, it's below average. I mean, it's below meets expectations. It's a 1.9 something if you were to average it out, which puts him below the line, which I don't think is fair. It represents by one person doing that. And likewise the other way, you know, it goes both ways. If we're averaging everybody's, which I assume that's the method that's being used, 14 2s and 1 1, I don't know what that averages out to, but it's below 2. I ciphered it out, it's below 2, I know that.
Commissioner Bujalski? Or Mayor Bujalski?
Just call me Julie. That works. Julie's probably the easiest. Thank you, Councilmember Johnson, or Bill. We had a lot of this dialogue at the Personnel Committee, and went back and forth, and on some of these things, we were unanimous, and again, we had 4 people, so some of these we were 2-2. So I think, personally, I think we can do whatever it is we all feel comfortable with. I think the biggest hurdle we were trying to accomplish with this form was to go towards something more like the county administrator in as much as reaching goals. Has he reached the goals that we've set out for the agency? Rather than have you bought the 500 widgets that were in the budget? It's just looking at it a little bit different, a little bit more philosophically. I can tell you that during our discussion, we, Bill and I, and I'm just going to throw you in, we had a little concern that we were going so completely against what our last format was, and that we weren't including any of it in there. We did have that concern. I don't know how Bill is. I'm over it now. I said what I had to say, and I'm over it. So I don't really care. I think that everybody has made some good comments as far as the 5 versus 3 scoring. It does give you more of an option, and I agree with Mr. Diamond that looking at some of the performance issues of the organization is important. But when I look at the last page, the narrative evaluation, I think that gives you plenty of chance
I agree.
to throw that in there.
Yeah.
So I think we can accomplish what you need. And I would say if everybody agrees, then let's go to the 5 and the 5 scoring and vote.
I second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second on that. I saw Mr. Dighton and Mr. Eggers.
No, I just say let's go to 5, that's fine.
Mr. Eggers?
Yeah,
Commissioner
I think the
Eggers.
most important thing, whether we go 3 or 5, to me, it doesn't matter. It doesn't say, you can't say 2.5. But it's just how he does from year to year. If we use the same form, the most important thing is whether he gets a 2 on average this year and a 2.5 next year, so you see an upward trend or a downward trend. For this first one, in this case, it's fairly important because we're doing a mid-year review, and we won't be able to compare it to the last one, really, so it'll be a little bit different. But, so I'm okay either way, because I don't think we're saying you can't do 2.5, but I just wanted to make that comment. Most importantly is how he compares year to year. The second thing I was going to ask, if we do this, you said we're going to get these forms with your comments on them by the end of February. Does that give you enough time to do one-on-ones with people, all of us? Assuming everybody wants to meet with you by the time the board meeting?
Yes, that's my goal. I put, again, like we did last time, I think that was very helpful and productive, and so, Rachel's doing awesome at getting on your calendars, but that's my
Okay,
goal.
all right, that was my only concern, that wasn't quite enough time. Thank you.
And my comments were, I mean, I'm kind of agnostic about this, but if this were a performance review criteria that was being used to help us determine whether to give an employee like a promotion or a significant pay raise, I would feel much more comfortable with a 1 to 5 range. But since this is a focus on a CEO's performance, I think the 1, 2, 3 numerical system works. But I think either one is okay, but I really don't see what was wrong, particularly with the original recommendation. And if my comment's the last comment, I can take over now and run the vote. Any more comments?
So the motion is to go to 5?
Yeah. Yes,
To
the
correct.
motion is to go to 5, and then before we vote, do we need to take public comment?
Yes.
Thank you, Tricia. Do we have any public comment? Okay, seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay, I wanted the 3, or 3 levels. That was for 5 levels, right?
Right.
Yes.
I preferred the 3, so.
Okay, so 1 nay. All right, moving along. Thank you for your work on this, Mr. Johnson.
Approve the form as amended.
Okay. And now we are going to, I'm going to hear a motion to approve this form
So,
as submitted.
as amended, so moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed?
And just for
I'm sorry.
clarification, we had a description of what the 1 and the 2 and the 3 mean. I know that was some question about the last review, that some of us didn't know what that really meant, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Will we get something so we're all on the same page and we all know what a 1 is and a 2 and a 3?
I will use my creative writing skills to come up with a 2 and a
Just so,
4.
just so it's clear.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's it.
Commissioner Eggers.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I mean, we do have the verbiage for 1, 2, 3, which I think was pretty straightforward. So I don't know what the 2 and the 4 are gonna be. I guess 3 is gonna be what 2 was, and 5, whatever. So if we could, we approve something that we really don't even know what it's gonna say. So it's interesting that we don't know what 4 and 2 mean now. Not a big deal, we'll figure it out, but.
A little more than 3, but not quite 5, I
Yeah,
think is what
is
it.
that the description?
Madam Chair?
That's
Yes.
fine.
My suggestion was that rather than change the 2 and the 3, that you put new numbers on the outside, whereas of 1, the new number 1 is unacceptable, and the new number 5 is outstanding, which would be more than just exceeding performance.
And
I
the 3 is
suggest-
meeting?
I suggest in the interest of time, if we kick this discussion back to the Personnel Committee
Sure.
and come back with a recommendation.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're going to move ahead with our strategic communication plan. Cindy Raskin-Schmidt. And I think a few of our committees have already seen this, and it's good to see it again at this level.
Good morning, board members. I am Cindy Raskin-Schmidt, your Director of Communications and Marketing here at PSTA. We are seeking an action item today for your approval of the Strategic Communications and Public Relations Plan. It starts on page 69 in your packet. After the slides, you'll see a much more detailed description of the plan itself and several attached sample documents as well. We're asking for your approval today because this plan is part of your strategic path forward, and of course, it's always good practice to plan what we're going to say and how we're going to reach people. This is a living document, so it can change as we learn more about our riders and our community and the best ways to communicate with them. The committees did all see this presentation, and all of them asked that we bring this before the full board for consideration. So first of all, why would we create a communications plan? Like I said, it's a good idea to plan. We can consider the situation and goals, identify our target audiences, outline the tools and techniques that we will use, and describe ongoing and new initiatives and activities. PSTA is moving forward, and we must show the public that we are delivering value. We transport people to work and school and give youth and seniors a measure of independence and give our tourists transportation options. We're looking to make changes while still maintaining and expanding our customer-oriented focus. And we want to reassure the public that they have strong leadership in place. Our target audience for this communications plan is our riders, our taxpayers, and our community leaders and stakeholders. So we're wanting to show these people that we deliver value, that public transit is valuable to them and to the community. The key message you're going to start hearing over and over and seeing is that PSTA delivers value to our community, our taxpayers, and our customers. Along with those, we have some new initiatives and some ongoing initiatives under each of those three categories. First, delivering value to customers, we're going to have a series of transit center town halls. We had the first one last week, and we have some pictures to show you later on in the meeting about those. We're going to do some customer satisfaction reporting. We're going to start something called Operation Customer Service, where we're going to look at things like on hold time for our customer call center and see if there are ways that we can improve that. Of course, the Williams Park transfer rerouting, incremental service expansion, some of that's happening in the February change with some later night service on some routes. And in the fall, we're going to look at North County service changes. Delivering value to taxpayers, we're putting together a project advisory team of local business leaders along the corridor for the Central Avenue BRT project. We'll be sharing benchmarking results. As many of you know, we're members of the American Bus Benchmarking Group, and we'd like to share the results of the comparison of how well we do with some of our peers with you. And we're also looking at launching some partnerships with transportation alternative providers, that first mile, last mile projects that we're looking at, partnering with groups like Uber and United Taxi and other providers around the area. And delivering value to our community stakeholders. We're going to host a job fair. We're going to expand our UPass program to include corporate entities. We are coordinating with the MPO priorities. And we are also working on a bus stop amenity partnership program where we're partnering with local municipalities to improve amenities at bus stops in their areas. Now, along with this, there's many techniques and different strategies of things we're going to do. First is going to be some market research. It's really important that we go out and see how we're doing in the community, see what our image is in the community. That information will help us further steer communications efforts in the future. We're also going to conduct a brand audit, looking at PSTA's brand overall, see how that's doing, and then come up with a plan to make any changes that are necessary to improve that in the community. We're using strong storytelling to make transit more interesting and compelling to people. We found that when you find a rider who has a really interesting story, it helps non-riders and other members of the public connect with them and see the value of public transit in the community. So there's a number of ways that we are communicating that using our blog, using our Facebook, our webpage, all those sorts of things. We're maximizing our use of digital media, so we're looking at social media, strong cross-platform social media efforts. We're going to be redesigning PSTA.net in the coming year to make it easier to find things. And we're doing a theme-based content calendar, so each month we'll have a particular theme that we're looking to share information on social media that's relevant to public transit. For example, families or veteran access, things like that. We've developed a very proactive news media approach so that we can develop stories in advance and bring them to reporters, giving them the who, what, where, why, and to connect to that storytelling, why that we want them to tell the story and why we think the public would be interested in hearing about those stories. We're also going to implement a formal media policy, develop some partnerships, and of course, do press releases together with HART when it makes sense for us to do so. Community event cross-promotion is pretty exciting. It's an opportunity for us to show the community how public transit is valuable in a different sort of way. So if you're going to, for example, the Central Avenue Solstice, an event partnership is an opportunity for people to attend that event and ride a bus who might not ordinarily ride a bus. So it gives them a positive public transit experience that they can then take into the future and hopefully become a rider again. As I said before, we're going to expand our corporate UPass program, reaching out to companies in the area and inviting them to give the unlimited public transit access benefit for their employees. We're just launching that, and that's going to be really exciting. If any of you know of businesses that might be interested, please do let us know. We'll be happy to reach out to them. And then, of course, stakeholder engagement is really important. We're going to work on ways to improve communications with employees. We're going to bring back our quarterly employee newsletter. And then we're also looking at ways to improve communications with you, our board members, and the community. Brad's weekly update, CEO update, we've started adding video in there every other week and inviting some board members to be in those videos with us. You'll be getting a call from us, all of you, eventually soon. And then we're working on getting out news clips bi-weekly so you can see the positive press that PSTA is getting. And then, of course, working on getting some national news. For example, we are going to be featured on the cover of Mass Transit Magazine for their February issue. And then lastly, and maybe the most important, is making sure we have really strong, high-quality, creative printed materials. So maps, brochures, schedules, the things that our riders use in order to be able to more easily access the information about our system. We want to make sure these are all really high quality. So that is my presentation. I am very happy to entertain questions. Just a reminder, it is an action item. We are asking for you to approve us moving forward with this plan in 2016. Some of these items are things we're already doing. Some of them are new, and you'll be seeing them roll out in the coming months. Thank you.
Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This, to me, is really key to our future, our plan forward. And as I said at the Finance Committee, based on, I emphasize feel, that this plan is only one half of what is contemplated by the Path Forward element. That element in the Path Forward reads, engage the broader community with outgoing communications and outreach. I want to direct your attention to the words engage and outreach. As I read this draft communications plan, it seems to be so much focused on messaging outward. And because it uses the words must show, must reassure, our message, describe new and ongoing, and delivers value. Yet as I talk to Mr. Miller, he reports he has plans for the inward communication as well. It's just not in this plan. He plans to use customer surveys, stockholder interviews, reaching new customers. They're just being planned within the planning department of PSTA, not within marketing. Now, maybe I've got some of that wrong, but that's what I understood. What we're doing in this draft, to me, feels that we're talking about one silo within the communications strategy of the Path Forward. And I think we need to make sure that we see both sides of that. So I'm suggesting that we refer this draft back to the staff for inclusion of the planned engagement process as part of our overall communication strategy. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Vice Chair Bujalski, and then Commissioner Brown.
First of all, I know you've done a lot of work. Cindy, thank you very much, and you and your staff, and Brad. And I know a lot of people have looked at it. I don't happen to be on any of those three committees. So this is the first time I have seen it and been able to ask questions. So bear with me if I'm asking something that everybody already knows. I do see in the plan that you do have some two-way engagement in here. I see all of that. But when I read it, I did get the same gut check feeling of what Bill just said. Not that you've done anything wrong. You are a marketing person, so your natural inclination is speaking outward and maybe getting feedback on how better to speak outward. And so I think there are two issues here. I think we absolutely need to do a better job communicating outward. So I think a lot of what you've described here is great. All in. I think, we need to have a strategic plan rather than defensive communication, or responding. We need to be proactive, so I love all of this. But I do agree with Bill that I think more has to be added to this about the other side of communication. And so I would like that conversation to be broader. But I'm very happy with this side of it. I would just like to see the other side of it as well, and I think it should blend together in some way. Thank you.
Commissioner Barkley?
I just wanted to let
I'm
everybody
sorry.
know that the Finance Committee has had this presentation delivered to us in our most recent meeting, and we unanimously suggested advancing this to the PSTA Board for consideration. So we've done as much as we can evaluate on the plan itself. If there are additional corrections or additions such as what Commissioner Johnson recommended, that would still fit within our parameters as well.
Great. Commissioner Wheeler-Brown?
Commissioner Eggers just told me that sitting on the end, I get overlooked a lot, so.
So it's called hay.
I just want to make a comment to Cindy. Appreciate all your work you put into this, and I just wanted to say that I was at the town hall, and one thing I told her there, I said, we all sit around in meetings, but we do not get in the community and ask the community what are their issues with PSTA. And we actually had a very, engaging conversations with many people out there. And I told Brad, I said, and it was windy, we were cold, but I said, you have to do more of these, because people were coming up to us. We tried to get people to come sit down, but we didn't have to try very hard. They were just glad that they saw PSTA out there, and they were glad that someone was listening to their comments. So I applaud you for that. And that's the only comment I wanted to make. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Finger?
Thank you. I just want to make sure I understand. Some of the commissioners that have spoken are asking for integration of a strategic marketing plan for personnel. Is that, I don't know if I'm clear about what you're asking. You want more, you said about the inside. I'm not clear what you're asking for.
Beth?
Yeah.
You want me to respond? The element that I felt was missing was the inward communication, the listening to the public. I think Mr. Miller used the term community engagement side, and that's what I would like to see added to this plan.
Okay. I don't see that this plan does not highlight that. So when you said inward, what I took from that was inside PSTA as a personnel. Yeah, so as soon as you used those, I think that came from,
From the outside of PSTA into PSTA, rather than things that we generate here internally and send out. So that's the inward and the outward.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. I would add that I think that marketing, and I'm going to guess in team with planning and others, have put together community engagement by partnering with other organizers to be out there, as well as asking us as board members to take the initiative to provide input as far as just the example that was made of who do we know that might be a corporation that would like to have the UPass at their campus. We know as elected officials, a lot of individuals in organizations that may not have had the opportunity to be introduced to PSTA in that format. So I think it's a great plan, and after we saw it before, I don't think it's missing that community engagement factor. Thank you.
Commissioner Gerard?
I would agree with the.
That's me.
Is that you? Stop it. I would agree that with the people that say, I think we need to have a bit more focus, and it's not necessarily part of the marketing plan, which is generally outward focus, but I do think we need to have a public input plan, you know, that we are going out and not just from corporations or partners that we might be working with, because not to bring up that G word again, but I think one of the things we did in that process was focus on corporations and, you know, important people that could support the project, and forgot about, you know, the people that were riding the bus. And I think it's very important that we get those voices. I mean, we know a lot of what they're gonna say. You know, the people that ride the buses are gonna say they need to run longer, they need to run more often, but we also get some very good information when they come and talk to us. But we ought to be doing more than just waiting for them to come talk to us. We need to be out there, and I like what Lisa said about the town hall. If we can do more of those things, and in a very structured way, I think we'll get some good input. And maybe that's another whole plan, but.
Commissioner Dayton?
In talking about the reception that we'd like to get from the audience, on page 78, we're talking about market research, which is exactly what we mean by getting something from the public. So there is that, and I'm great in favor of it, but the thing is, when you do market research, the first thing you do is you figure out what it is possible that you're going to discover, so that you don't get stuff and you say, oh, what do I do now? You want to beforehand be pretty sure what you're going to get. And when you do this, you work with people who are familiar with it and so forth and so on. So that when you finally do get the research, you have an idea of what you're going to do with it. And I think this is very important. And so if we find out that people who don't ride the bus or do whatever it is, that should be something that we're ready to do something about. That's the first thing. So I think that there is a lot of things that we're going to find out, and if we are ready to do something about it, we'll be good. The other thing that I'd like to comment on that I thought was very good is that on page, I guess, 92 and 93, we talk about redesign PST.net to focus on better content delivery, and then we talk community event cross-promotion, which talks about what PSTA can do for the community. I go crazy when I hear people say, well, I looked at the PSTA formula, and if I got to go here and go there, it's going to take me 3 hours, and it costs. No. There's got to be a lot of things that PSTA can recommend to people that we can do very well, very quick, and this is how it's done. So I think this gets into that to show that PSTA really works very well for people who use it. So that I like, but we got to target the promotion or the research that we do. Thank you.
Okay. We have a few people who have indicated that they want to speak, so this is the order. Commissioner Beavis, then Commissioner Scott, Commissioner Long, and if there's no one else new who wants to speak, Commissioner Finger. Okay, hold on. Okay. It'll be Welsh, Eggers, and then Finger. Okay. Commissioner Beavis.
Thank you, and thank you, Cindy, to your staff. And this is one of the things that when I met with Brad last year, it seemed like we were in the very reactionary mode of marketing and responding to a lot of bad press that we've gotten over the past years, and we never really emphasized the good things that are happening within PSTA. And so to that, I think this is great to let people know, how good it is. I do see some, and I agree with a lot of the comments about the inward part of the plan. I do see some market research for non-riders in Pinellas County to gauge the PSTA's public image. That's kind of an inward thing. I think we need to get more of that so we can be better and be something to those that are non-riders to hopefully make them riders. And To Commissioner Gerard's point about the G word, that I approached Brad, about a month ago, about that specifically, that we had a lot of corporate partners that bought into the Greenlight plan, and I asked if we could go out to Nielsen Media, which we're doing tomorrow, to reach out to them and see what we can do, you know, whether it's the UPass and, you know, again, engage with them and hear some of the inward part of that and let them know, you know, give them some of the outward as to what we're doing, but also listen to them. And the green light failed, but it doesn't mean that we can't provide better service to them as a corporate partner. So I like it. I think it's great. And I think we can improve it with some of the inward part. So we just become a better machine. Thank you. Thank you for your time, too.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Scott?
Thank you. First of all, I think this is a great document. I support it. I think there's a lot of good things in here. I agree with that we need to be listening just as much as we're communicating outward. Also, as Commissioner Dighton suggested, there are some things that PSTA does really well, and we need to highlight those. We all hear about well, it's going to take me 2 hours to get from point A to point B, so I'm not going to do it. Let's find the ones that we do really well. Well, hey, and we can promote. You know, you can go from here to here, and it's only going to take you 10 minutes, and there's no changes. It's only going to cost you, you know, $2.25, whatever. And I think those are the things that we need to promote really well. One point I wanted to make on the community event cross-promotion, where it says identify service to events where additional buses may be needed to be added to an existing route to handle increased traffic. It's exactly what we should be doing to any route that's going to have increased traffic. However, there were some concerns that were expressed at the last Finance Committee meeting about there appeared to be some PSTA buses that were not really added to routes to maintain headway, but were kind of running more specific service. And I don't, you know, would like to talk with you sometime, Brad, specifically about that. But any buses that are added to routes have to be added to the whole route. I mean, PSTA can't just run a parking lot shuttle because it's convenient for an event. So, thank you.
Commissioner Long?
Yeah, Cindy, I'm very pleased with this document. I guess we all have a different perspective about how we read things, because from my perspective, I saw a lot of input coming into PSTA, from the town hall meetings at the transit centers to the customer service performance rating, the benchmarking results, the market research, the job fairs, the Brandon audit. I mean, I don't know how much more input we can get, so I agree, and I think it's a great plan that you've devised along with the help of the rest of your team, I'm sure, and I support it 100%. Thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you. Absolutely. Commissioner Welch?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to say that the planning committee did review this as well and are recommending approval. And we did actually talk about further engagement. You know, this is a living document and continuing to improve. But specifically, we talked about engaging students, folks that use PSTA to get to work as their only means of transportation. So that engagement piece was talked about and will continue to be improved.
Thank you. I just want to step in here real quick and just being mindful of time because we go to 12:15 today. And I heard loud and clear, and I agree with Commissioner Johnson, that it's real important to have that strategy of public engagement that's two-way. And I wonder if maybe what seems to be lacking or what might be missing is not the strategy here, but like the tactics, like specific mentions of town halls, et cetera. So, Brad, did you have, based on, you've heard from a number of commissioners today, did you have a suggestion of how you might want to take this back and bring it to the board?
Yes, I think as several of you said, this is a living document. And what I would recommend is that you consider approving of this communication plan today as it is, and then we go back and collect all of the different ways, some of which are already included in here, but all of the ways in which we receive input, public input, community input, and put that together as a package plan and bring it back to you as soon as we can. But, I mean, I think it goes incumbent without saying we are every day receiving input and working at that. So we're not going to stop doing that. But I think it would please the board from hearing your comments to see that, you know, to have a plan for how we engage and hear from the public whether it be at Nielsen or with the riders or whoever. So approve what we've got today, and you'll see something come back to you in the next month or two, fleshing it out more on the input side.
Motion to approve document?
Second.
Okay, great. Commissioner Eggers and then Vice Chair Bajowski.
Yeah, two quick comments. One, I totally agree with Commissioner, trying to think who made the comment, Ms. Commissioner Long, about, I like what's been done. I think it's excellent. Communication is obviously two-way, so whatever group we're dealing with, that communication is obviously all about informing, educating, listening, the whole thing, but it differs by group because everything has its own twist. But I do agree. I think this is a very great start. Second thing is apparently Commissioner Welch was right. On page 78, there is a 5-step rating system and not a 3, so I bow to you and change my vote on the previous. Can you repeat that? Only on this.
You were right.
Only on this one.
Good
That's all I
catch.
got.
Good catch.
That's all I have.
Vice Chair Bajowski.
I support the motion, and just to further comment, Brad, on what you said, I don't think, I'm hoping you don't feel this way, but I don't think we need to just come back and show us how we're already communicating. I think in marketing, that outward communication, I think we all agree with that, but I also think there is a marketing strategy, if you will, on a plan of receiving the inward communication. And I think we can do a better job of how we've done it. It's not that we haven't done it. We've done it. I think staff has really tried to do all of those things at town halls. But maybe there's someone out there smarter than all of us that can say, hey, if you do these 10 things every year, you're going to gain community knowledge of who you are and what you do, but B, you're going to get these inputs that you need to run a successful organization. So I think there's some strong strategy that has to go in there that we should be looking at. And I just bring up that the MPO is getting ready to go out on 3 listening tours around the county. And so I think that's another thing we have to be very aware of. They are 2 different organizations, but should they be treated that way? Maybe we should all be doing it together. I don't know, but there's, I just think there has to be an actual plan put together. And yes, that's okay if that's a separate document. Thank you.
Commissioner Fager?
Thank you. May I suggest, as individuals, as board members here, that the feeling being as strong as it is regarding, like I look at page 80 on content development and using strong storytelling, that if there's a lot of consensus that I hear that there should be these additional strategies that maybe someone else knows better, that with the motion that there be an addition that each board member send in at least one idea that is different than what you've read before, because if we, having the experience and being out there in the community and feeling that more input is needed, then I think ideas should come from the leaders that are sitting here and say, what is it that you want to see and how do you want to see it done? Because the first idea that came to my mind under that content development and using strong storytelling is it should be ambassadors that are bus riders should be the ones telling the stories, not the employees telling the stories on behalf of the bus riders, or having employees ride the bus with the bus riders when they're available and hearing the stories just to hear the stories. So if we are sending in those ideas, then we can't complain later that strategies were put into place that we don't like because 15 of them were ours. So I would like to amend the initial motion to include that at least we send in at least one. idea of how to gain community input that isn't already part of using town halls or something that's already been provided to us. Something creative that we would like to see.
The person who seconded the motion would have to be agreeable to the amendment.
Well, I made the motion, and I would have to be agreeable.
Oh,
I mean, I think,
That too.
thought I'd throw that out there.
You're sitting over on the end there.
I mean, I like the document the way it is. I think what you're mentioning is a good thing that we could do moving forward. I would hate to hold up a good document for that. I think what your input is great, and case in point, when we go to Nielsen tomorrow, they're making sure that they're bringing people with stories, good or bad, that have ridership issues or whatever it is. So I think I don't ride the bus, I'll be the first to tell you that, but I know people that do, and we want to make sure that we do bring those stories forward, whether it's through us as board members or what. But I don't know what the tool is for that, but, I mean, I'm fine with the document the way it is, but I do think we could, as members of the board, could bring stories forward.
Yeah, being mindful of time and feeling like we're running out of time on this agenda, I think Commissioner Finger's suggestion is terrific. I don't want us to feel like we have to make motions now to get specific ideas into what's going to be an ongoing discussion. So I think it's an excellent idea, but if we're not hearing any other support for amending the initial motion, I'd like to get on with the vote. Is there any public comment? The motion on the floor is to accept the strategic communication plan, and with the acknowledgement that this is a living document, we're going to bring some ideas back from committees, and Brad will have something for us to look at again in the future that's going to reflect the concerns that have been expressed here today, specifically about public engagement. Okay. So all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Cindy. Great work. Great job. The next item is the PSTA MPO joint workshop. And I'll just be really brief. I hate to give this short shrift. What's Heather doing up there? Sorry, I'm sorry. I thought we took that off the, I'm sorry. On my agenda, we had taken that off.
No, but Heather, I think, could be very brief, and maybe
Okay.
since this has gone through the two committees,
Thank you for being patient with this shakedown cruise, if you will, of my first meeting I'm chairing. But, okay, so the first information item we will go over will be the Central Avenue BRT Action Plan. Heather Selfish.
Okay, I can make this brief. So here today, basically, to let you know we're moving forward on the Central Avenue BRT project, and we're excited to be doing so. As you know, we received a commitment from DOT for $500,000 to conduct the project development phase, and then we also have the PSTA commitment of local funds of $200,000 to contribute toward that effort as well. Right now, we are working on drafting a letter to the Federal Transit Administration to request entry into this project development phase, and we have a meeting next week with Region 4 to review that letter and improve it if it needs to be. We are also working on our consultant scope of work, and that will be brought to you next month for review and approval. So I wanted to give you a heads up on that. In spring, we will start our public engagement efforts, and this will help us to refine our alternatives so that we can streamline the rest of the project development process. Following that, in the summer, we will begin doing the heavy technical work, and this is where we'll really begin engaging the consultants. So a lot of this work will be in that scope of services, and this will allow us to get the details that FTA will require. In 2017, we will finalize our environmental documentation and select the final preferred alternative, and then that will allow us to refine the financial plan and complete the other documentation so that we can request that FTA includes this project in the fiscal year 2019 budget. Throughout the project development process, we will be conducting public outreach. We'll start with one-on-one stakeholder meetings and local government coordination. We'll have public forums. We'll have a stakeholder group with business and community leaders that we can bring specific details of the project to for their review. And then we will also conduct our regular social and print communication activities. So that was it, nice and clear. But happy to take any questions.
Any questions, comments?
I just want to say that the Finance Committee was privileged to hear this report before, and we were very pleased with the way things are moving forward, and we hope we can continue with that.
Thank you.
Planning committee shares the same comments.
Okay, thank you. No problem. Thank you, Heather, great report.
Thank you.
Moving right ahead to the PSTA MPO 22nd. It was very well attended, and it's notable that it was the first time in anyone's memory, going back at least 10 years, that the PSTA and MPOs had a joint workshop. It may be one of the first joint meetings ever, but it's significant that this is a step forward, shows great collaboration and leadership from both organizations. We, a few of us here sit on both boards, but there's some people who are just on MPO and some people just on PSTA. So I think it was really helpful to hear Whit Blanton give the rundown of how MPO sets its priorities, how we work with FDOT, and work with the federal government, because the MPO basically receives the federal money, determines the priority list, and monitors that, and is responsible for a number of different products, a long-term plan, a 5-year plan, and also it was either a 1-year or 2-year UPWUP, like a daily working plan. And then our CEO gave a great presentation on what should all be, I hope, familiar to us now, our PSTA path forward. And I think it was a great example to show a number of leaders in the community that PSTA is just really taking some great steps forward, and that we've learned a great deal from the lessons of the Green Light referendum, and that we have some exciting projects that we're working on and legislative priorities, and really put it out there how we're looking forward to working cooperatively with our MPO partners. We also heard a short presentation from the Florida Department of Transportation. I think it was Debbie Hunt that joined us. And we kind of ran out of a little bit of time towards the end of the meeting, but we did get a short presentation, a rundown of some case studies of how the Austin, Texas MPO does their priority setting, which is quite different from us. We also looked at Orlando. And it's my hopes as we come back, we're going to meet again in June, but I would really love for us to get more into the details of looking at those case studies, because that's where we learn a lot about how other MPOs interact differently with their transit agencies. And I think there's a lot of great lessons there to learn. So are there any other comments from other people who attended or who didn't attend, but Mayor Beavis and then Commissioner Johnson?
And mine's real quick. I just want to apologize for not being there. I had a conflict on my calendar that I wasn't aware of, but it's a monthly thing, but it has now been place marked on my calendar, so it won't happen again.
Great, and I believe we're still working out the final date for our next meeting sometime in June, but we'll get that
I
nailed
thought
down.
I saw it 29th on, 29th came across.
So hopefully that will be something that we can all be sure to be there for that date. Commissioner Johnson?
Same,
Just
oh, I'm sorry.
And then Commissioner Barker.
Just a kind of a gut reaction to the meeting. I was kind of disappointed, but I kind of understand why it didn't happen at the first meeting, that we didn't focus more on land use and transit opportunities, how we can optimize the placement of transit in land use areas that can benefit most from it, thereby maximizing the return on the public's investment in transit. That connection to the land use and optimization.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Berkeley?
I just want to apologize also for not being able to attend. I also had a conflict on the particular date, but I will do everything possible to get to the next one. I watched it on the various electronic devices as much as I could, and it was very excellent. So I'm glad the meeting was very successful.
Okay, any other comments? Seeing none, we will move to our next item on the agenda, reports and correspondence. Brad Miller, PSTA
Okay.
Performance Report.
So in the interest of giving you more input opportunities in a better way. On page 135 is the stats, but Cindy is going to show, this is like the pictures I showed of my family. A couple of highlights I wanted to bring to your attention. First, I see. First are some pictures of the town hall that our new board member, Lisa Wheeler Brown, highlighted. It was a cold day.
It's on the other side, we can't see it.
It was there for 1 second.
We'll have to do a reenactment.
I don't know what's going on, yeah.
I saw it for a second there.
This is why we need a new AV equipment.
Yes, our IT department
There we
is
go.
working hard
Whoop.
on a new system. Is it on our iPads? It's on our iPad, on GoToMeeting.
There. Whoop. Why don't you go ahead?
Well, let's go ahead with the report.
Yeah. So there's some photos that we'll certainly send out to you, and I think we're going to send a video out of the meeting. But as was described, this is the first of what we expect to have multiple town hall meetings with the riders. Again, as Cindy's presentation showed, we're focused on 3 audiences: our customers, and showing improved customer service every possible way we can, to the taxpayers of Pinellas County, and to the citizens at large. Got a lot of great comments. Of course, our first meeting was at Grand Central Station, our highest ridership location in the system, in St. Petersburg. And so I would say a lot of questions were about the changes we're making in Williams Park. It was great to have Chair Rice and Commissioner Wheeler Brown there. I got questions like, or statements made that the reason that you're leaving Williams Park is to build condos on the park, and Commissioner Wheeler Brown answered that as a city councilwoman, effectively in the negative, I think, on that. Second issue, which are coming up here, yesterday we had a great turnout at our 4th presentation of an electric no-emission bus here. This was a New Flyer bus that we took a little tour, thanks to Mayor Beavis and Commissioner Lisa Wheeler Brown for attending that as well. Again, we have applied for a low-emission grant that will hopefully be received successfully. I've heard that the FTA is not going to make those announcements until this summer. And if we're unsuccessful, we can make another application again. The last issue on my report is about Williams Park. These are pictures that she's showing now of training activities we've had for I would describe it as an army of PSDA employees that are going to be wearing yellow safety vests and down there in Williams Park starting next week talking to riders and giving them information. The reason we're having training, mine scheduled for this afternoon, is because there's a lot of details. If you want to, just like we experienced at Grand Central last week, explaining people how to catch the same bus that they're catching today, we're going to walk through that. I'm very happy that our track riders committee, Elaine Mann is the chair of that, they volunteered. Some of them, we asked them to volunteer, so they're getting the training. I'm going to be down there, as well as a homeless advocacy group called Celebrate Outreach, which is, they've been great too, and they're going to come with us. They're going to pass out water bottles and talk to folks at Williams Park to make sure that everyone understands exactly what we're doing. By the time we meet here again, we will be out of Williams Park for the first time since 1952 and have a awesome expanded grid. Some of the public outreach is going to be done after the change, and so they will no longer be just in Williams Park. They'll be around downtown St. Petersburg helping people out. So look forward to all those things coming. I hope to have another town hall sometime in the next couple of weeks in Pinellas Park. We've got another one scheduled for Clearwater. Again, I think it would be great. I will try to get with the folks that live near there. We're going to try to get one at Countryside Mall. to have the board members come out and, you know, it's pretty much just a listening session. They can tell you whatever they want, so it's great. I'll take any questions on that or anything in the packet, but otherwise.
Vice Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Brad, could you just fill us in on the loss of ridership year-to-date in 2015 and what you attribute it to?
Yes, we expected this because we had a fare increase on October 9th. And as noted in there, the bus ridership is right on par with what we expected based on the fare increase. There has been a significant drop in the last couple of months in the Jolly Trolley ridership. And we're trying to exactly understand maybe why that is on Clearwater Beach, et cetera. We're tracking it. I will note that this is a national trend and local trend. Hart's ridership has been down a little bit more than ours has been. Jacksonville, Orlando, Charlotte. You know, and I'm reaching out to all my colleagues in the industry to see if they've got some different things. Obviously, $1.75 gas prices maybe have something to do with it. But in our case, I think it's really very consistent with with what we expected with the fare increase.
You'll keep us posted as you
Will.
look at the trends?
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, thanks for the great reports, Brad. Did you cover the contracts?
Future meeting, we're on to future meeting subjects, which is in your packet on page 144. Again, next month, we're hoping perhaps to have our Government Affairs team here to talk to you. I think we're going to have a presentation about some survey work, some input from our riders we received over the last couple of months on our customer satisfaction. And then third is, as Heather pointed out, we'll have a consulting task order for you to approve related to the Central Avenue BRT design. So look forward to that. I think as Mr. Diamond mentioned, also we're going to be going to Tallahassee along with the beach chambers on February 9th and 10th. I think that pretty much covers the near future.
Okay, thanks, Brad. Any other business before we go to board member comments? Okay, great. Seeing none, we'll start to my right with Commissioner Finger, and we'll go down the line.
Thank you. Just a comment about earlier in the vote for vice chair to chair and so on. I think maybe in the future, at another time, we should consider how we do business in those affairs, and perhaps, you know, looking at it as almost the same way we have the evaluation form for CEO. I look at having an opportunity to chair a board such as this is a year-long interview to get to that point, and that each board member has that obligation to pay attention to what's going on with other board members if they are wanting to get to that role, not just a move up because of title, because that's the way we used to do it, that's the way it's worked out before, but just that we just relook at the way we do business and ensure that we're not at that point by next year or end of year already. So, thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to welcome Commissioner Wheeler-Brown to the group, and yeah, that's all.
Thank you.
I welcome you as well. Welcome to the other end of the dais down there. I have no other comments, thank you.
Well, again, I'd like to welcome my friend Lisa Wheeler-Brown to the board. I want to thank everyone for going through the process of voting and reconfirming the prior vote in in front of the public. I think that's a very important thing that shows our goal of being transparent. And thirdly, I'm excited about the legislative priorities that's going to help PSTA and our county move forward over time.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I want to welcome our colleague Lisa Wheeler Brown. Great to have you here. I want to congratulate you, Chair Rice and Vice Chair Bojowski. Thank you both for your leadership. I want to thank the Planning Committee for electing me as Chair for 2016 and Vice Chair Mark Dayton. So looking forward to the year ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you. I too would like to welcome Councilmember Lisa Wheeler Brown. I know you were past president of KONA, so this shouldn't be too tough. And I'd like to really congratulate Chair Rice. I'm really confident that you will be a good leader for this organization. I know with 15 board members, it's tough to have 6 eyes going all different directions, and I would ask your patience with her as she develops those extra eyes. And otherwise, I would just suggest to all board members, you kind of need to check your email before the meeting, because we've been getting emails recently, just the night before. I appreciate all the help with the Clearwater Beach to the airport transit project. Yes, day trippers do create our biggest problem, but from a hotelier standpoint, it would be nice if when somebody flies into the airport, they don't have to rent a car just to come out to Clearwater Beach and park it for 3 days at $15, $18 a day at the hotel, and then just take it back. Also, the time, if that transit can be worked so that it's faster than the regular car. And to Commissioner Fingers' comment about the officer election, the nominating committee did talk about trying to have an application process where we'd have some dialogue from the people that are interested in being an officer as to why they're interested in being an officer and what they think they can bring to it. And it's something we haven't had in the past. So thank you, Madam Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd like to thank former Chairman Johnson for his service to our organization. He took on this organization after Green Light and that situation, and so it was a big role that and big shoes he had to fill. And so I want to thank him very much for his service to us as a group, giving us a fair voice, trying to give everyone in the audience a fair voice, and trying to find his way. Sometimes it almost takes the whole year to get your feet on the ground. And I think in the end, you did a great job, and I thank you very much for your service. I also want to welcome, I'm just going to call you Lisa at this point, so thanks for joining the craziness here. I also want to show my support for Chairman Rice. I want to thank this board for having a valued conversation. I think it was very important for us to have. I will say that I know there's been some general statements. I never expected that it was an automatic that I would become chairman. I just want to make that very clear, and I want to make it very clear that I have worked very hard. I've been on almost every committee this organization has, and so I have been on an interview for those however many years, and I have gone through this succession. I do think the conversation is worth having, because when a person gets appointed to the executive committee, the very nature by them saying, yes, I'm going to get into the queue, if you will, is because you're saying I'm willing to serve for 3 years and 4 being a past chairman. You're saying I'm willing to go through this process to see if I can meet to your level. So it's not just about vice chair to chair. It really is about going through the queue of being our secretary treasurer, our vice chair, our chair, and then serving as the past chair in an advisory capacity. And so that gives a person essentially 2, if not more, years to get themselves acclimated to being in a higher leadership role. And as has been mentioned, many people have done that. And so I just throw that out there, that I don't think anybody expects an automatic. I certainly didn't. But I think what we have been asking out of our future leaders is to get in the queue and go through that process and show your leadership capabilities. And, you know, I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I do think I've shown that. And I don't think anybody can say anything different. So I am very happy to support Vice Chair or Chairman Rice, and I do think it's important that we all move forward together in a cohesive way and be telling the same great story about this wonderful organization that we call PSTA. Thank you.
Nice. Commissioner Dighton?
Yeah, I just want to wish great results to our new board. Welcome Commissioner Willard Brown. And I also want to say I thought that Cindy did a terrific job on our strategic communication plan. I think it's really very complete. Thank you.
Thank you. Just welcome Commissioner Wheeler Brown, and also just say that I have complete confidence in our board and our leadership. So congratulations.
I as well want to welcome and congratulate Commissioner Wheeler Brown on her election and her service here. I look forward to working with you. I also want to thank our former chair, Bill Johnson, and congratulate our new officers. This is obviously a huge amount of work, and for those of us who are new to this board, I think all of you are great examples of the commitment and the dedication that is needed to be successful in our roles here. So thank you very much, and look forward to continuing to working with you this year.
Yeah, just a couple, everybody else has been saying it, but I absolutely welcome you and congratulations on the election. It's good to have you on board. Look forward to hearing your contribution, and already had that today, so thank you so much for that. Thank you, Commissioner or Councilmember Johnson, for your service, and it truly was kind of a stabilizing year. It's been a tough year in many ways, but I really appreciate that calm approach that you brought to each meeting. Very important, so a real special thank you to you. Also, congratulations to our new chairman. Look forward to working with you and moving this organization in the direction that it's heading, and I think we can all do a great job of assisting you in the executive committee. So one thing I would like to do, and I don't know how to necessarily do this, but I would like some of our committees to just take a look, and maybe it's just a legislative committee or whatever the committee is, just to take a look at the whole concept of the lobbying and bring back their recommendation as to whether our attorney needs to do that next step of saying, this is how I feel. I'd just like to hear their thoughtful review of that in a committee and see what their comments are, and then maybe bring that back for our consideration to direct the attorney to give us a letter, an opinion letter that may be a little bit higher level than what he's done so far. So I'm not asking the board to take action, but maybe if the committee would just look at that and maybe bring us back some thoughts in a future agendized item. If that's okay with the board. That's all I have. Thank you.
We can do that.
Well, I just want to say that I'm glad to be a part of this board. I'm looking forward to working with each of you. And congratulations to our new chair, Darden, and Julie. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll wrap this up by saying a big thank you to Chairman Johnson, outgoing Chairman Johnson. Big shoes to fill, and a great appreciation for the skill of keeping eyes on all commissioners and who wants to speak. So I'll have to maybe lean on you for some advice for that sometimes. But thank you for the incredible job that you did and your attention to detail and your obvious care for PSTA. I also just wanted to take note of the really incredible conversations that we've had here today, and also some really exemplary work products. The legislative committee packet was pretty impressive. The strategic communications plan, incredibly detailed and thought out, and gone through 3 committees. We know we have some changes, but what we saw today was a very, very good presentation and plan. Thirdly, again, I'd like to welcome Lisa Wheeler Brown and just comment that City Council Member Wheeler Brown really has jumped in. She, did the MPO joint meeting right off the bat, and went to the town hall event, as we saw, and also the electric bus demo. So thank you for jumping in, and thank you for your excitement about PSTA. And I would also just like to tell you that I am so excited about this year with PSTA. I really am, and I'm not going to give a speech now, but you're going to hear me talk a lot this next year about things that we can do as transportation leaders and as transit leaders, and where we can really move the ball forward in this region, talking about this important topic. And thank you, each and every one of you, and thank you to our staff. And with that, we adjourn the meeting.
Yeah.